Welcome everyone to another meeting of Cabinet taking place on Tuesday, the 4th of February 2025. Most welcome members, officers, any press that may be in the public gallery, and I'm just around and there aren't any, but there may be some members of the press watching on the council's YouTube channel alongside members of the public. So welcome to all those that may be watching on the council's YouTube. So for those councillors unable to join the meeting in person, but are members of the cabinet or the executive, obviously you're welcome to participate online in the debates taking place at the chamber this morning, but you won't be able to vote and your attendance won't be formally noted. And then with regards to meeting etiquette, can I ask that for those members that wish to speak on a matter, be it a question or presenting a report, would you kindly introduce yourself by stating your name, the ward that you represent, and the responsibilities that you have? And similarly, with those officers talking to the board, you could introduce yourself, including which service area you work for or at. Right, so one minor agenda adjustment to the agenda. Colleagues, if you note on agenda item 16, we've got the executive response to adults and health scrutiny report on meeting your needs. And I'm going to be taking that as the first agenda item once we get through agenda items 1 and 4. So let's get going. So firstly, before we commence with apologies for absence, I just needed to take a moment to thank Councillor Melanie Olivo for her dedication and energy for youth power. As you will all be aware, she stepped down from her cabinet post last week, and I'm very willing to commend her energy and activities in the short period that she was a cabinet member. I will be setting out in due course providing an update as it relates to cabinet portfolio arrangements for youth power in the coming weeks. So moving on, can I just take any apologies for absence? Joy, could you kindly provide me any formal apologies for absence that you did?
Yes, Chair, I received apologies from Councillor John Wallace.
Thank you very much. Are there any other apologies that colleagues have received? No. All right, thank you very much. Those are noted. Across the agenda items, there are exempt appendices specifically for agenda item 18. So I just wanted to draw your attention to that. And then moving on to declarations of interest, as set out on pages 9 and 10. In accordance with the members' code of conduct, this is a time for members to declare any disclosure of pecuniary interests they may have in any matter being considered at this meeting, having regard to the guidance attached to the agenda. So as it relates to any of the agenda item, including any information contained in exempt appendices, are there any disclosable pecuniary or non-pecuniary interests that need to be aired at this point? No, there are none. If we can record that as none, then if we can go to the minutes of decisions of cabinet made on the 9th of January 2025 that are set out on pages 11 to 60. Can I just ask cabinet members to approve that these are an accurate record of decisions made on the 9th of January? Do we agree?
Agreed.
That's agreed, Joy. Thank you very much. And as it relates to appointments to outside bodies, there are no outside bodies you presented and announced, should I say. Now we're going to be moving on to, as mentioned earlier, the first substantive agenda item is now agenda item 16, And that's pages 703 to 718 in the agenda pack. And I am going to be asking Councillor Wilson if he could kindly present this executive response.
Thank you very much, Chair. So Councillor Neil Wilson, Plastow South, Cabinet Member for Health and Adult Social Care. Now, the report by the Health and Adult Social Care Scrutiny Commission entitled Meeting Newham's Future Needs in the Period 2040 to 2025, I think that should say, there's a typo gone in there, to 2040 was noted at the Cabinet meeting held on December the 3rd last year. Where it was agreed to provide the executive response to the Commission's recommendations. The report had 22 such recommendations, the health and care system as entirely within Newham. 2 of these directly related to the Council. They are recommendation 7, which is communication with residents in the private rented sector, and recommendation 14, which is a report on the public health grant spend. 11 recommendations were made to the Newham Health and Care Partnership, which is in sort of integrated care system speak called a place-based partnership, and the remainder to local NHS organisations, the North East London Integrated Care Board, the overarching board which covers us and the neighbouring boroughs, Barts Health NHS Trust, which has a role within our acute provision, particularly at the hospital site, East London NHS Foundation Trust, which is a mental health and community trust. All of the recommendations have been accepted, except for one, which was relating to the changes to a national GP survey, as it's clearly ultra various, it's not within our remit, but within the authority of Newham Partners. But I want to put on record that and I've had this conversation with the chair of the relevant commission, and I think I'm on public record at a previous meeting to say that we should continue to campaign to make that GP survey far more granular, far more interactive to serve the needs of our residents. So it's not within the authority of this report, it's outside the scope, but that does not stop us as a campaigning council with other local authorities to campaign for a more reliable, it's not so much reliable, but a more inclusive survey. In relation to those specific to the council, as I've mentioned, Chair, there were 7 and 14, the communication with residents in the private housing sector, PRS, to work to communicate access to services to residents in the private renters sector is in progress. It's a very important topic. We have in this chamber noted with alarm some of the conditions that people are living in the private rented sector, not least damp and mold, but also, you know, infestations or very bad state of repairs. And it is important that we communicate across how they are part of our Newham residents as well. And the report on the public health grant, which paragraph recommendation 14 refers to, following a refresh of the 50 Steps Health and Wellbeing Strategy, we're at stage 2 of that, and it's owned by the Health and Wellbeing Board as an overarching strategy of the partners involved. The London Borough of Newham will publish an annual report, progress updating, reporting against key performance indicators and review use of the grant. We have made that commitment here, but we're underlining it to the full executive response. So it's definitely a very important report, and in responding to Commission's recommendations, the health and care system is demonstrating its commitment to ensuring a planned response to the long-term challenges of population growth. The Integrated Care Board did commission work for the whole of the North East London footprint, but we would argue that Newham well has, through our Adults and Health Directorate, very good projection modelling based around population growth. Addressing workforce and estate challenges, that is in relation to obviously the buildings and the land that are currently built on. In response to this increase in the borough's population will give rise to continued opportunities. We would continue to look obviously for opportunities to develop not least our hospital site, but particularly keep the pressure up on the redevelopment or delayed redevelopment of Whipps Cross and other acute providers. But it's not just a hospital, it is also land for our primary care, and hopefully have more co-location within our services between primary care providers and the local authority. For example, our local infrastructure forum and one public estate programme. So one public estate programme is specifically related to the Newham Hospital site, which is in my ward, but is a very wide expanse of land for development. And they will help shape better use of our estate and its regeneration as a part of planning for growth. One of the main obstacles that this authority, along with all the other local authorities, is perceiving is that we want central government, and we have more segue into central government over the estates programme. In the past, the estates at regional level has not been strategic. With the new administration in central government, there has been some really positive news that there is a flexibility of approach and a true commitment to subsidiarity, whether it's through the strategic role of the Mayor of London, but also the use of the ICB footprint. Not the footprint, the ICB process. The Commission's recommendations around including patients' voice, particularly important in this borough with such diversity. The patient's voice, the co-design, which we have led on in some particular areas in public health, but co-design and the voluntary community faith representation, particularly important, that we do not lose sight of the impetus and dynamic that was exercised during the pandemic, but we actually use and employ a technique from the local authority as a partner with others to make certain that all of our communities are served by a population health, a growing demand on population around our priorities to widen their participation of our residents in their health and well-being. So I do welcome this report. I think it's a really good tribute to the working across the areas, and we look forward to coming back with other reports from the KPIs that we're intending to do around public health. Thanks, Chair. I'll leave it there.
Thank you very much. Okay, colleagues, I wanted to ask if there are any questions to what you've read in the report. What you've read in the report. And I'm just making an assumption the scrutiny colleagues are content with the response. Are there any additional things that colleagues wish to add building on the report? Councillor Madeline Sarko.
Councillor Madeline Sarko, itself Deputy Cabinet Member for Education. It's a huge piece of work and really great. I've got really great admiration for Neil, Mumtaz and their team who have been working on this for a long time. What's particularly interesting to me is the added is that the residents in the private housing sector, both for the elderly and for those families that need housing that's may be impacting on their health as well. And I was just wondering whether they were looking at non-digital of ensuring that people are reached. We're not relying too much on social media and on emails, etc. So I was wondering how much pharmacies and the landlord licensing scheme will be used to get information to those people.
Would you like a response? Yeah. Just to make it really clear, the report was from the Commission, and this is a response to it. So thanks for the compliments for myself and Mumtaz and the Directorate, but I think that the compliments really need to be addressed to the Scrutiny Commission. But the response, in terms of page 712, paragraph 7, you raise an important issue around communication with residents, where especially where they might be digitally excluded. The private rented sector, the first bullet point, my colleagues are working towards a one council approach, and the Adults and Health have an operational interface meeting with senior housing service colleagues each month. I want to emphasise that my meetings with Councillor Verdi and his predecessors are well established, and they're inclusive of Councillor Ruiz. So there's not just officer interface for operational interface, but there's also a strategic interface around links across the directorates. And on the other point about revising information and booklets, hard copies, these will be given to people discharged from hospital. I mean, as a person who goes into the hospital quite a lot, I think it's important. It's not just about booklets, but we do have public health events both there and at our libraries and any other points. We've had interfaces in pubs and in workplaces in Westfield. So we're not averse to going out to the community, and that has been praised in other quarters, that we're developing the links with small businesses, because employers need to know about, for instance, the ability to have vaccinations, whether it's for flu or COVID, or whether it's about how to manage people with respiratory infections, not least possibly causal, but not solely caused by things like damp and mold. I don't get back lyrical, but I think I'll leave it there, Chair.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. So, just going to
comment as chair of the report.
no, because we've got quite a lot of agenda items and you can use your report and have conversations with.
Okay, so I'm not allowed to put my points on record.
You can submit your points on record if you want. Sorry, I don't understand the question. What the?
I'm just asking if I can respond to.
I know, and I've said no. Got lots of agenda items. We need to conclude by 2:30. Sorry, what was that?
No, I just said, wow.
Okay, so Councillor Masters, in respects of this chamber, it would be really helpful to be respectful. We've received an executive response to a really important matter, and we'll note across all the recommendations pretty much what we've been. And I think that's a very, very positive position between scrutiny and the executive, and mainly because you can't on an executive to a full list of cabinet for approval. I'm just slightly curious. Right, okay, so cabinet members. Yeah, I know the recommendations on page number 704. The reasons set out in the report, cabinet agree. 2.1, approval of adult social care scrutiny commission. Is that
Agreed.
Thank you. Let's move on to the next agenda item. And that's agenda item 5. Colleagues, agenda item 5 on page number 17. Transformation and improvement integrated performance state. Colleagues, this is a presentation of quarter 2 integrated for the council for the period of the year, municipal year, should I say, 2024-25. And as you know, as part of our outcomes-based framework, we have, in line with our good governance and transparency agenda, been presenting these quarterly reports that highlights progress, achievements, so areas of improvement required within the organisation in terms of service delivery improvement, not least in light of the financial constraints and challenges that we presently face. It's very important that we're transparent in the presentation of the health check of this organisation, and it is a useful regular reminder in line with our internal governance approaches, one that sits on the executive, be it cabinet, deputy cabinet member, or corporate directors, and indeed all officers of the council are accountable for delivering good excellent services within the budget envelope set and within the times required. In terms of this particular quarterly report on the transformation improvement, what we have done is that we are presenting a new form to this report because it's presented a number of things in the one strategic framework. It responds to our outcomes-based performance, our progress against the Local Government Association Corporate Repair Challenge Action Plan, as well as the delivery plan and our transforming new for the future. So that's the new delivery model for the organisation. So we've now decided to pull it all together, so it makes a much more hefty report. I'm going to be inviting James Pontis to talk through some key aspects. I will be inviting members of Cabinet to highlight areas as it pertains to their service areas, particularly as much as the news stories are welcome, just amplify where further work will be done. So on that note, I'm going to be pass it over to James Pontis. Introduce yourself, James.
Yep. Thank you, Mayor. So I'm James Pontis. I'm Assistant Chief Executive, Chief Transformation Officer, and responsible for the corporate performance function and a range of other support services that have inputted into this report. And thank you for the very helpful outlining of the updates we've made to the format for this report and the kind of overall intention for it. So I wanted to take up the entirety of the meeting. I'll just give a few opening remarks if that's okay, and then perhaps individual portfolio holders may want to fill in additional updates. In terms of overarching kind of points to raise to Cabinet's attention today, this report is made up of sort of three core components that set out what I'd say, make up our sort of performance improvement and transformation journey. The first of which is the report, which, as the Mayor's very helpfully pointed out, we've worked hard on updating the format, is our performance appendix. And we've taken on board, hopefully in positive ways, a lot of the feedback that Cabinet members and yourself, Mayor Roxana, have offered up to us in terms of the transparency of reporting and the ability to kind of understand narrative and context for a lot of the information that was previously presented. And you'll note from the format that's been produced, there's now very clearly articulated narrative that relates to all of the exceptions that have been raised from the relevant corporate director or head of service for Cabinet to interrogate and to kind of share with other colleagues outside of these meetings and other places. The second part of the report takes us into the LGA peer review action plan and outlines kind of current position and the current challenges that the action plan is seeking to address, which I'll give us a few highlights of. And then finally, and I hope this will become a more prominent feature of future reports, we've got the latest Transforming New and for the Future highlight report. So just to give you a sense of the shape and structure of the report, that's what's covered. If I quickly go through the Building a Fair New and Performance report, what you can see on the updated format is a clear description of where the exceptions are. And my overarching commentary on those exceptions are that there are, the continued sort of challenges in the areas that we've reported on previously that remain challenging for the council to kind of improve in, particularly the areas highlighted as red-rated exception indicators, and they relate to a number of discrete areas of services like take-up of leisure services, for example, continued outcomes monitoring from our new and work, and continued take-up of community wealth building pledges in our kind of business community, and particularly in the sort of key areas that relate to environment, continued challenges, but continued progress in some areas relating to fly tipping, and our sort of overall borough cleanliness ambitions, which are kind of outlined in a number of detailed highlight reports for Cabinet's attention. We continue to report some challenges on our community safety indicators relating to ASB and some of the wider partnership indicators that relate to knife crime and youth justice. But commentary is updated there for information. On housing, we've got the continued challenges of temporary accommodation, which I don't think will be of any surprise to not only Newham, but to a range of other councils that are facing similar regional challenges, and continued improvement work required around our housing services, which link very much to our housing strategic housing improvement plan, which we're working with the regulator on. And then finally, in terms of kind of key outcomes for children's, we're reporting some key exceptions relating to our EHCPs and children engaged in early intervention outcomes, which the commentary is sort of clearly outlined for Cabinet's attention. And continued challenges around our resident experience services, although some really potentially quite significant recent improvements, which this report doesn't pick up in that area, will hopefully indicate a positive direction of travel around and complaints. I just wanted to highlight as well that this will be, I expect, the last time we report on this suite of indicators and this set of corporate plan commitments, because we are at the very sharp end now of concluding the review of the corporate plan that we've been working on collaboratively across CLB and Cabinet, and we are days away from producing the sort of final revised version of the corporate plan, which will, is hopes, go to the next Cabinet in February. So in many ways, this is a parting report from the previous corporate plan, but we expect to see a number of the indicators remain, but a number of indicators move into kind of service-led spaces as well, as we move into that new suite of reports that will come from the corporate plan there. I'm happy to go on to the LGA action plan and transformation report, but I wonder if that might be a useful opportunity just to pause on performance and to draw out those kind of key issues.
Thank you very much. I've got a couple of comments in addition, but I'm going to just invite other colleagues if they want to. I'm going to take Councillor Sarah Rose, then I'm going to take Councillor Neil Wilson, Councillor Niraj Patel. Is there anyone else that wishes to say anything? Okay, Councillor Sarah Rose.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Sarah Rose, Statutory Deputy Mayor and Cabinet Member for Environment, Sustainable Transport, Children's Services and Education. Personally, can I just say how much easier this report is to read? I'm not necessarily somebody who's actually in love with data and stuff, but actually this makes me want to read it because I can understand it. So thank you to James and his team. I think that it's fair to say that yes, while we are talking and highlighting things, that do have some challenges, and I think that's actually very healthy for us. So on, and I'm sure Mirage will come in about the waste and fly tipping and stuff, but I'm really pleased that of the number of healthy school streets that we've managed to deliver. I think that the fact that we've now said schools have to opt out rather than opting in has made a huge difference. And they can't just opt out without giving us a decent reason, you know. And it's not always easy, and there are always teething problems, but we do eventually get there, and actually everybody benefits from that. The same as I think we will be on train to deliver so many more EV points this year. Probably more EV points than we've got cars, but you know, it is part of our longer term plan about moving people into electric vehicles. So I'm really pleased about that. Mirage, I think we'll pick up on the waste. If I talk about supporting our young people, many years people would move out of Newham for education, and now actually people are moving into Newham because of education. And I think that's testament to how we have delivered our schools. All, I think, are either good or outstanding. And for a borough like Newham, that's quite an achievement. However, my concern still remains with the number of exclusions. I'm probably even more concerned about the number of off-rolling. We're not necessarily allowed to talk about, but actually that's more than the exclusions. And the other area, and although I note that there's been a decrease in the number of knife crimes. We are seeing an increase in our young people around knife crime, and it's something that the Youth Justice Board looked at very carefully last week, how we are going to be able to try and change, but it is a worrying trend for us in children's services. And the other area, of course, is SEND, where we have had a successful inspection. That doesn't mean to say that everything's hunky-dory. We still have a long way to go before we are delivering not only the quantity, but also the quality of EHC plans to a target and to the satisfaction of both families and schools. So we know that we have a lot of work to do, but we also know that we have a very robust plan that we're working through, and certainly parents are seeing the difference. So I'll end there, Chair. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I'm going to take Councillor Neil Wilson.
Yeah, thanks very much, Chair. So paragraph 421 about the healthier, newer and ageing well. And I want to focus on the positive and then, like my cabinet colleague, talk about what still remains the challenges. The Ageing Well Festival took place, and I want to pay tribute to one of our academies actually for hosting that at nil cost to us and having a full range of services. I think it shows that when we work in partnership, even where some relationships in the past have been strained, we can actually develop an event that was basically very cost effective, but more importantly, celebrated our residents over the age of 50, an increasing cohort who are living longer, but also having need to focus, like the event did, on improving their health outcomes through information dissemination. We've already talked in this meeting about how do we disseminate information, but there were exercise tasters and clinics. The full detail of that is on page 34, if I've got it right. And that important event does follow the launch of our Ageing Well strategy, aiming to improve health and well-being of residents 50 plus and reduce the very persistent and long-standing health inequalities, not least through the intersectionality of age and race. The next key achievement is the rate of permanent admissions to our residential care homes, an increasing cost burden on this council as in all other local authorities, and I welcome central government's commitment to reform adult social care, which is quite frankly fragmented and is a rather cost-driven upwards sort of trajectory. But the rate of permanent admissions to residential care homes remains for age 65 plus below the London average. And I think we have to highlight that, and last year's admission numbers. And a high percentage of desired outcomes, more importantly, of people at risk are achieved through our safeguarding inquiries. The most important thing that this council does, whether in children's or adults, is to safeguard its citizens. And we've got 96% in the risk being the desired outcome, so 96%. And the last one, in terms of health, ensuring children get the best start in life remains a focus. So 94% of the new birth visits were completed with 14 days, a positive outcome that exceeds both national and London averages. And along with what Sarah was saying, that wouldn't have been the profile that we had from the hospital or other care providers only a few years ago. So I want to pay tribute to those. Obviously, they're in partnership with a lot of other people, including the health listener on the last one. The challenges, though, attendance at leisure centres appears to have dropped, but we would argue that that is because under the previous provider, which had a rather opaque relationship with this council called Active Newham, there was a very, I'm going to be on public record, rather uncertain data collection processes, and we have been determined through our new contract, the GLL Better, previously known as Greenwich Leisure Limited, are under a transformation of that data because they are providing services under a contract for the London Borough of Newham. We have accuracy of data. It is monitored on a monthly and sometimes even weekly basis from returns. So we feel that we're on a better footing for that. It remains important to continue to track progress. Comparing to previous years needs to be treated with caution, therefore. And I want to say that a key objective during year one of the contract is to create a new baseline for benchmarking. That benchmarking will be along the indicators that we have in the rest of adults and health, which is clearly around age, all the protected factors, including, of course, ethnic group and diversity and age groups. Now, the number of rough sleepers sleeping rough through bi-monthly count has increased last year, 23, but I can put on record that it was at a low point when I went out with the team last week, and it's currently a decreasing trend. Newham has seen an increased number of new people rough sleeping, however, due to specific interventions in response and the resilience of our rough sleeping integrated model. The formal annual street population snapshot will be comparable to previous years. It is important to note that the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government take that snapshot in February. We went out and it was based on the data in, get my dates right, where are we, January? So that was in a survey done 2 months ago, but there's not released it. But we're hopeful and we are fairly confident that it will be comparable with previous years. I want to pay tribute to the officers leading now. I don't want to name them in a public meeting, but the rough sleeping integrated model has been a success story and a real tribute to the way we're working across directorates. And I think it's important to note that those challenges and areas for improvement are based on real solid data collection by hardworking staff, but also working in partnership with Change, Grow, Live in the case of our rough sleeping integrated model, and in terms of our officers in public health under leisure, working very closely to monitor contract delivery. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so what's Mirage?
Thank you, Mayor. Councillor Miraj Patel, Green Street East, Deputy Cabinet Member for Environment. This report, where it relates to environment, is generally very positive, and I welcome it. We've seen an increase in household waste sent for reuse, recycling or composting, albeit, you know, it's 1%, there's not much in it, but if we think about the, you know, sort of the hundreds, if not thousands of tons of waste that we produce as a borough and part of our wider framework of the East London Waste Authority, it does add up. So it's quite significant. We've got lots of opportunities coming out of our current PFI contract going into you know, a model that will be far more beneficial for the residents of Newham post 2027, and that's something that we are partnering with President Havering and Barton and Dagenham, our partners within the ELWA framework. In terms of fly tipping, there is more work to be done. I am hopeful and actually quite optimistic with the EnviroCrime team that's been set up, and with us focusing on the data-led approach that we're using in terms of hotspots, looking at hotspots, utilising CCTV, and looking at sort of problem areas that we can reduce fly tipping even further. And we've gone through quite a big waste change as of this where it's affected every single household in the borough. We did have some issues, although pleased to say that the complaints and also the miscollections are lower than we were seeing in summer, and they're back to pre-waste changes. So that's really good to see. We've also moved away from certain aspects of our public realm team using a paper-based system to digital, which will help greatly over the next years to come, I'm sure. The technology that we've recently links us in areas that we weren't joining up, in, for example, cage vehicles to fly tip, individuals or our staff had to go back to base and then come back out, which will save and work so much more efficiently. And I'll end on the note of our public realm team, specifically our refuse team, actually winning the Keep Britain Tidy award for if you can help me, Alid. I think it
Was it?
was service team of the year.
Team of the year.
So I'd like to extend my congratulations to all of the team on winning that and achieving that. Yeah, thank you.
All right, super, thank you very much. Okay. Blossom.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Blossom Young, Beckton Ward, Cabinet Member for Housing, Landlord and Tenant Experience Improvements. I really welcome this report, and particularly the formatting, which is much more straightforward in lots of ways. So thank you very much, James, for your work on that. Just in terms of where we are with homes for our residents, it's really great to see our affordable homes for Newham programme continuing, particularly the regeneration programmes, and seeing that 12 Trees Park has completed its first phase, which will be a really important scheme. And I know that the Mayor and Community Wellbeing team have been working incredibly hard on that. So, and that's an important piece of the supply for the homes that our residents need. And of course, that supply is important. It's important in our temporary accommodation challenges and our general needs. There remain challenges, of course, in what we do. We are only just over 12 weeks on from the regulator of social housing's judgment of Newham back in at the end of October. And I know that the team have been working incredibly hard on development of an improvement plan, which we are in advanced discussions with the regulator on at this point. And while there are significant challenges that remain in making the improvements to our homes that are needed, the direction of travel in understanding how we've got to this point and what improvements we will make and how we will accelerate that so that our residents have the decent homes that they need and can feel safe and confident in their homes is very much well underway. And it's really good in that vein to see that there has already been an increase in the satisfaction of our residents with repairs since the last quarter. There is work to do, of course, on that. And we are still, the direction of travel is right on repairs completing first time, but we're not there yet. And that's very much part of what we will be picking up in that report.
Okay, thank you very much. And then Councillor McLean.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you, Chair. Councillor Charlotte McLean, Cabinet Member for Resident Engagement and Resident Experience. I just wanted to come in on a few points under resident experience, just on the back of what Councillor Patel mentioned with regards to the waste collections and the change in waste collections. So one thing to remember is that, you know, most things have a knock-on effect onto the areas that I'm responsible for. So resident experience is obviously the call centre, complaints, etc. And you can see from the report on big page 76 that we've got a few reds there. But as James Part has mentioned in his remarks briefly and is written here, that there was an increase in demand on the service from complaints and telephone calls because of the change in the waste. But that's now been resolved and the demand has gone down. And I'm confident that in Q3 you'll see a marked improvement in the answering of the telephone. And I believe that in December we surpassed the target under James's leadership. So thank you very much, James and Olivia, for that one. Because it has been a lot of hard work that's gone into the service area, and you'll see from the transformation plans that's mentioned in the budget that actually there is a detailed plan as to how the resident experience will be improved for the residents of the borough. So I'll leave it there because I know that time's short, but I just wanted to flag that. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, so, and then
Councillor Madeline Bunting, Forest Gate South, Deputy Cabinet Member for Education. Under supporting our young people on page 69, you'll see that the inclusion to be used to provide examples of children and young people in schools in order to prevention of tackling school exclusions, which is an excellent use of resources and building capacity within schools to ensure that students given every opportunity to make the best use of their time in schools and not be educated elsewhere if possible. Secondly, on page 71, you'll see that we've got that the educational psychology service is being increased in capacity. Also, there's a greater offer of speech and language therapists available through the joint work with the East London Foundation Trust. For those involved in education, health and care plans in schools, one of the reasons that we are not able currently to meet our full targets within the timeframe of the 52 weeks is the lack of specialist services to write the reports as part of the education, health and care needs assessment, which is undertaken before the education, health and care plan is written. Our schools are working incredibly hard to identify children in need of interventions and support beyond those at support, which is known as a needs assessment. At the moment, because of a lack of capacity, not just within Europe, but countrywide, in terms of the number of available educational psychologists qualified within schools, and also speech and language therapists to undertake the specialist assessments and to be able to look for things like autistic traits within children's speech, language and communication needs. That is what's holding back the progress and the speed of EHCP delivery within the time frame of national statutory guidance under the Code of Practice 2003. It's a nationwide issue. Borough is looking to deal with it through increased capacity and looking for creative ways to increase capacity through joint working and one council approach. And therefore, although there is a negative on page 68 in terms of EHCP plans being issued within 20 weeks from the initial request, still being at 60%, the team officers and that joint work with the North East London Health Trust is being undertaken to build that capacity to ensure a sustainable reaction to that current deficit, so it can become a sustained positive.
okay, and then I've got Councillor John Whitworth.
So I'd just like to mention some of the projects undertaken by areas associated with my portfolio. The acceleration in healthy school streets and the programme to procure for electric vehicle charging points is very commendable. Represents a very big acceleration. There's a lot of work that's been done on the new Air Quality Act, which is due to come out this year. This will be a little different from the previous ones in that there's more stress on public engagement and public involvement. Work has been continuing in schools for a few years, mainly in small projects. Small amounts of funding have been obtained. This depends on the cooperation of the schools, but this has been enhanced by the school's sustainability conference, which is now become annual. There'll be another one in June, and this is a good vehicle to get schools involved and showcase the good work that's being done. I will mention the climate action team, which is, of course, the cost of the council is just in the salaries and the maintenance of the team. They get funding, and they've been successful getting very good sources of funding, more than £3 million this financial year. And there are a couple of projects that are coming up, but one of them, hopefully, there is a bid for £3 million of funding, which will be Newham's share of the funding from London councils. If it's successful, that will provide the means to retrofit 300 council homes. So this is a very big project, and we're hopeful that that will come to pass. And also, I'll also mention the community energy Newham, which has worked with Repowering London to equip 4 schools and 3 libraries with solar panels. That there is now a share offer going public this month, which will enable residents to take public ownership of this project. So that's so good work is being done, and I think very encouraging.
All right, I'm gonna suggest that we can conclude on this part. I mean, I've just got a few comments and observations. How progress updates in quarterly reports reflects figures and numbers and data sets being presented in our cabinet reports. So for example, there's a highlight as it relates to strong community voices of residents taking part in some decision making. And then we've got a report coming to today's cabinet, 10,000 people. And then I guess the set questions that are going to be raised by other members in their roles as ward councillors is what's the discernible difference they'll be able to see as it relates to service delivery by wards and the resident experience, because presently there is still quite a lot of amplified dissatisfaction. And I note that a number of the items across all the areas are as with very few having been completed. And no doubt scrutiny, as well as audit committee members will be examining aspects of this in order to get assurance. And then I'm also noting some of the public announcements we've made around senior colleagues exiting, and how do we ensure the momentum is maintained in some of these critical areas.
Yeah, I'm happy to provide a quick response to the overarching comments. Very helpful overarching observation. I'd say particularly relating to the number of corporate plan commitments and LG action plan commitments that remain in progress. And I think there are a couple of things in the next quarter which will move into a kind of completed status, but also I think the good work that cabinet colleagues have been leading on to prioritise the corporate plan will have a significant positive impact on sort of organisational capacity, which I think cabinet colleagues should be credited for in the way in which they've engaged with that, and that will come through in the next period. I think on the LG action plan and the broader points, which we haven't really covered in the conversation today, so far this morning. One of the key tasks on the LG action plan is to revise and refresh that plan in light of organisational capacity and capability over the coming year. And I think, it's clear from the kind of amount of work required to see through the kind of conclusion of the action plan over the next 6 months that either revised timetables will be needed in key areas, but also, perhaps some more strategic conversations will be needed about kind of organisational capacity to respond to that, the budget, the kind of significant performance challenges that are faced in key areas. And I think it's a very insightful observation to offer around the kind of coming period as well. No doubt, kind of leadership capacity, as you mentioned, is a key issue to continue to support and to kind of focus on over that period as well. So hopefully that's a helpful response.
Right, so let's move on to the next part of this report.
So I'll be brief, just given time, because I know there's substantial items to go through for the remainder of the agenda. But you've also got the LGA action plan, which I just referenced. The current kind of exercise that we're undertaking on that action plan is to review delivery milestones and timetables in light with that comment made about kind of corporate capacity and capability over the coming periods. I do think the kind of key areas that I'd highlight as acceptance for Cabinet's attention on that report relate primarily to the activity relating to relationship reset, governance and prioritisation. But I'm happy to sort of report verbally, even though that's not reflected in this report Cabinet, that I do think significant progress is due to be made in those areas, particularly some of the work that I know we've all been involved in around relationship reset, involving external support, which I think has been moving in a positive direction. And also just to reference again the really good work that's been happening outside of this formal space to revise the corporate plan and to streamline that. Those two activities alone will address some really significant aspects of the work that the LGA action plan has sort of highlighted for the organisation to take forward. As part of that, I think there's obviously an ongoing need for continued strategic conversations about the significant strategic challenges the council faces and how that kind of is interfaced with by the LGA action plan and the transformation plan. And those conversations no doubt will need to continue. But I think from a delivery perspective, hopefully some really positive movement in the near future there. And the only other kind of key exceptions to flag on the LGA action plan relate to the kind of continued work happening around the overview and scrutiny improvement plan, the conclusion of the LGA support for us around member development and the good work that's been happening with the cross-party members working group, which I understand has had its final meeting or final kind of meeting of this phase of its work, and no doubt there'll be future focuses for that group to support, and the kind of continued focus on all of the work that flows from the budgets and the asset strategy, which the action plan also covers. So those would be my sort of highlights to flag to Cabinet today. And I'll quickly cover the transformation plan just to aid speed and conclusion of the item. But on the transformation plan, I think the key highlights to flag are the kind of key decisions that are about to be implemented and made in consultation with Cabinet colleagues, and there's workshops planned over the next couple of weeks to go through this in more detail, to start to really turn programmes 1 and 2 of the Transforming New for the Future programme into very clear structural changes, and to start seeing that accelerated delivery of the digital and technology improvements that you've heard of from a pilot perspective. And the continued mobilisation of the wider programme remains a focus over the coming period as well. Could probably spend a bit more time on the transformation programme itself, but given time for this item, I'll kind of keep it brief, and perhaps the next kind of time that this report comes to Cabinet, more time could be spent on those other aspects of the plan as well. So I'll stop there. All
right. Unless there are any final questions, I would suggest that we just vote the recommendations. The reasons set out in the report and its appendices, Cabinet's progress made during 2024-25, delivering the new plan. This includes the building a fair and family LGA challenge action plan and the transforming new for the future plan as outlined in this report and its appendices. Note that this quarterly performance report will be further developed in the next cycle to include progress and updates on the Directorate transformation plans. Okay, so is that agreed? Yeah. That's fine. Now moving on to agenda item 6, which is overall financial position 2024-25 quarter for the budget monitoring period 8. I'm going to be inviting Councillor Zulfikar Ali to introduce this.
Good morning, Councillor Zulfikar Ali, Cabinet Lead for Financial Resources, and can I say thank you, James, and the Mayor. I know that the financial situation is challenging for all of us, but I think the previous item that we had a lengthy discussion on is a clear demonstration that this is continuing, and we're working hard on all fronts to make sure that we deliver our manifesto commitments and our corporate plan and building fair new targets. So excellent. Thank you, James, to you and your team, and indeed the Mayor. Chair, this report is continuation of the cycle of quarterly financial monitoring that we've been provided to the Cabinet. And as it stands, this covers the savings tracker, the designated school grant, the housing revenue account, position of reserves, and the capital. And this is a summary version of where we are based on all the actions we've undertaken. And we know, Chair, that during the last year and indeed this year, we have implemented a number of good governance and financial control, and they are still ongoing. However, our pressures remain the same in terms of temporary accommodation costs, the young children and people and adult social care costs are rising, and these remain our ongoing pressures, and that situation is making life difficult. Now, for us, as I said previously, we're not alone in it, but this is hitting us the hardest, and it is beyond local authorities' financial capacity. If you think about, the total revenue budget, 395 million, 2/3 of it already goes to social care. It does not leave us much room to do things, to deliver other services. And the entire local government sector is affected by this, and we know why. This is Tory government's mismanagement of the economy, the lack of support for our residents during the last 14 years. And this is having a continued impact and a significant impact on council's finances, leaving the disaster legacy for incoming Labour government to sort out the Tories' mess is what I would say. However, the local government finance is not the only challenge faced by this government. And I'm pleased and thankful to the new government that they recognize and acknowledge the work that the councils like Newham have done and are continuing to do to keep services going through very, very difficult time. It is encouraging to note that the new government has already taken a number of steps in the right direction to help local authorities. We have seen since July 2024, when they came into power, the new government published the local government financial policy statement for 25-26 at the earliest opportunity. Subsequently, the local government finance settlement was published earlier than the time the Tory used to publish. And they also showed a commitment to publish multi-year funding settlement for the next year. And that has already been welcomed by us. And that's something that we've been trying out for many years, that will help us to plan things better based on medium-term financial situation. In recognition of the difficulties local authorities are having, meeting their costs in terms of rising homelessness, accommodation, and social care costs, the new government invited struggling local authorities to apply for exceptional financial support, which we did along with many other authorities. We saw the government announcement yesterday, where they allowed 6 authorities across the country to raise the council tax above 4.99% that the government had already assumed in the local government financial settlement back in December. Currently we have the 6th lowest council tax in London, and we are facing unprecedented financial pressures. With heavy heart, our part of US application asked for 5% increase in the council tax over and above the 4.99 the government has already assumed. And yesterday's announcement permitted us to increase the council tax by 4%, in addition to the 4.9 the government has already assumed. This is not something that we took lightly, because we want to minimize the impact on residents. I would like the cabinet to note that based on our assessment of the position of other London boroughs, even with the permitted increase the government has allowed us yesterday, we will still remain the 7th lowest London council tax authority. However, we recognize the needs of our residents and remain committed to continue with our council tax reduction scheme as part of the budget process. We published initial proposal to reduce to 70% of our EFS application, and feedback from engagement process. The revised proposal is to take it to 80%, and that work is still ongoing and will be part of the final budget proposal. Whilst approval for 4% additional increase in council tax will be a step in the right direction, we still await the outcome of the application, which is expected by the end of this week. As I said earlier, Chair, we have introduced a number of spending controls, and I'm grateful to the cabinet colleagues, executives, and the CMT, but continue to find mitigations, managing down the identified pressures, managing risks, and seek to identify, implement mitigation actions to reduce the overspend. In order to achieve this, the council directorates have implemented a number of additional financial controls. All recruitment requests are being approved by Director of Expenditure Control. We have a target reduction in agency staff. All overtime additional staff payments are to be approved by Director Panel. All purchase orders are being approved by Director Panel. All requests over 10,000 are going to the Corporate Leadership Board for approval. All purchase cards have been cancelled or reinstated only where necessary. You can see how senior management team is working hard to make sure that there's consistency and control across the authority. As I mentioned, it is good to see we are working together to operate as one council to reduce costs, increase efficiency, and manage resources better. Delivery of the agreed saving is a key priority for the council and something that is being monitored very closely. I'm pleased to say that the forecast at present is that we are on target to deliver 86% of the savings for the current year. We're not stopping there. Work is ongoing, and we're doing everything we can to make sure as far as we can to achieve what we set out to do. And we're managing this pretty well. However, in Q3 forecast, Chair, you will note that the general fund overspend is 45.5 million. And this is an improvement of 1.1 million from the Q2 report. And that is 0.27% decrease. There are a number of areas where there has been positive movement, and the financial controls are showing that they're working. And even the TA is the most costly service that we're providing. You will note in the report that our efforts to reduce the nightly costs, using less travel lodge and other nightly accommodation has resulted in £1 million plus saving. But that work is ongoing and will continue, because that's a priority for us to do that. The budget for this year was also balanced with an anticipation use of 60 million for capital receipts. Section 5 of the report provides you an update on where we are, and the council is confident that 15 million will be delivered during this year as expected as part of the budget process. The report also deals with the reserves situation, the dedicated school grant, housing revenue, and capital. In terms of capital, the forecast profile so far is we expect to spend 462 million on that basis out of 672. However, there are projects which are ongoing and they will be part of the future budget report as we go along. The deficit, as you know, this year, Chair, is 45.5 million this year, and we do have earmarked reserves, and as the report clearly states that the gap between the anticipated budget and the cost funded from earmarked reserve, but this is the position which we can't repeat ourselves. This is going to be one-off, and assuming that the government allows us the EFS in the future, that will help us to look at the balancing the budget of the future years. I would, and there, Chair, myself, and ask Conrad to like to do that, but all I will say, note the report, note the progress, note the mitigation action we are taking, by the difficulties, departments of the council, the cabinet colleagues are working in order to contain the situation, but this is something that is not sustainable, and it's something that we can't solve alone. I hope that the government will look at the local financial authorities, reflect the borough new. We are regarded as an outer London borough, but all the characteristics in this borough are in London. Poverty level, unemployment level, population rise, the aging population, the needs of people. We have the youngest number of people in our borough. Those factors need to be reflected, and I'm pleased to also say that the government is reviewing the government financial formula, and I hope that this will lead to some beneficial impact for us. And I'm also responding to the local government financial review process through London Council and GA and lead ourselves to make sure that we make the case for new and put the new on the map. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Okay, Conrad, nice to introduce us.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Conrad Hall. I'm the Corporate Director of Resources and Section 151 Officer for the Council. Andrew Ward, Deputy Finance Director. Just very briefly, as Councillor Ali has filled in a lot of detail of the report, just to highlight a couple of important things. As mentioned, the final local government finance settlement was published yesterday and it is being debated in the House of Commons tomorrow. Councillor Ali has covered the point on council tax in there. There are one or two slight changes to other grants from the figures announced in the regional local government settlement. I do have one or two concerns about funding for national insurance contributions and possibly also some of the ring fences on some of the grants. We won't do a separate briefing on that because it will be wrapped up in the budget report to Cabinet the 18th of February, which will be published on Monday. So if I saw bearing in mind currency of that directly the subject of this report, it was worth mentioning. And the other thing to say before I hand over to Andrew, of course, to re-emphasise the point Councillor made, although there are, I agree, there are significant issues in terms of the way that the union is funded, nonetheless important. We take all of the action we can within our own resources and agency in order to address the finance should be faced as much as we may. I agree with Councillor Ali when he says that those also arise from wider on its own. I'll pause there. Andrew Ward is online. Maybe helpful to say a couple of words from him, if that's all right, and then we can take some questions.
We did try that. Andrew, would you like to have say a few words?
Sure. Thank you, ma'am. Yeah, Andrew Ward, Deputy Director of Finance. Hope I'm being heard clearly. So just a few highlights from the report itself. It's the quarter-3 monitoring report. It follows, of course, quarter 1 presented to Cabinet in August and the quarter 2 budget monitoring report presented in October. On the general fund, there has been a modest improvement in the position, but the key message really is that strategically we remain where we were, with significant pressures on social care and most significantly on temporary accommodation and the costs of providing for both those statutory areas. It's the overall budget monitoring, so the report also covers the HRA, where we have a separate section on the HRA, and we are on track and in line with the budgets that were set for the year. For the dedicated schools grant, I'm pleased to report that good progress continues to be made in bringing down the DSG deficit as planned in line with the budgets. And on the capital forecasts, where overall the position we are expecting a fairly sizable underspend on the capital budgets that were set. Elsewhere in the report, and some of this has been covered, so I won't speak at length on this, but the section 4 of the report does give information on spending across the council, showing and demonstrating some of the impact of the spending controls that Councillor Ali outlined have been put in place for this year in response to the general fund position. Section 20 details what's happening with the savings that need to be delivered for the current financial year, and as you heard, we're on track for an 86% savings delivery rate, with some savings taking a little longer to deliver. And section 21 details the expected reserves usage in the year, all of which would be important contextual information, of course, for the budget report, which follows later this month to Cabinet. Very happy to take any questions, but thank you for just letting me set out a few of those comments.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any questions, colleagues? No. Okay, so we're just noting this report, and I appreciate probably the somber mood relates to this cabinet paper. It's very challenging, and we will be publishing the final budget plan 25-26 next week.
Sorry.
Subsequent cabinet Additional cabinet meeting taking place this month. Did you want to say something?
I didn't, it wasn't a question. I just think sometimes it's worth highlighting just where our overspending is, but I'll leave it. I don't need to.
Well, I think it's pretty evident.
Yeah.
Accommodation and social services.
Yeah.
Primarily need.
Yeah, adults and children.
Care and children.
Yeah.
Sorry, I've just seen, did you want to say something?
I just wanted to add and contribute to the conversation, just in terms of what was highlighted in terms of temporary accommodation. You know, obviously, I know it's not a favourable position. Sorry, just to introduce myself, Councillor Amaverdi, Cabinet Member for Housing Needs, Homelessness, Private Rental Sector and Community Safety and Crime, Green Street West. As Councillor Ali highlighted, there has been some positive trajectory in terms of what we've seen in TA, and some of that due diligent work has taken place and showcased in 6.4 of the report, which includes obviously taking people out of hotels, which was one of our outliers in terms of where we are, and pathways which are being created for people in terms of the next 6 to 12 months in terms of secured accommodation. I think there's something really important to highlight. Obviously, you'll see on, if I just scroll down, apologies, just need to reference it because it's really important to highlight. It's on 0.19, which is the homeless response program, which is a really important piece of work. That's ensuring that the key foundation of the council has the resource and team in place to that really early intervention work and prevention work. You will see obviously on 6.22, in terms of numerous changes that are being made in terms of pathways that are created. And just in terms of pipelines that the team's ensuring the fact that people that do present themselves as homeless, the team can adequately support them. Similarly, in terms of what you will see in terms of 6.26, which is in terms of the pilot work we're doing with MHCGL, which is a really important piece of work as well. So just wanted to highlight some of the work that the team are doing in terms of not just being static in terms of the approaches that we've had in place, but some of this core resource foundational work and pilot work, which is fundamentally important to tackle TA. Recognise there's still work to be done, and hopefully forecasts continue as they are. But as Councillor Ali highlighted, I think this is something that is difficult, not across just Newham, but on a national level in terms of the housing crisis, supply that we're seeing lack of. And landlords are exiting the market as well, which is something we have to contest with. So there's many components that we have to consider. But just want to give members the reassurance of some positive work has taken place, which is supporting the budget, but recognise there's still more work to be done.
All right,
Thank you, Chair.
thank you very much. Is there anything else that anyone else wants to say beyond what has been stated so far? No? Yep. Thank you.
Oh, yes, I'll leave it.
Recommendations for the reason that I
think there's a typo. Okay, so could we just correct on the recommendations page 118, big number. Replace CW. I assume stands for Corporate Leadership Board. And replace it with the reasons set out in the report and its appendices, the Mayor and Cabinet is asked to 3.1, note the report and its appendices. 3.2, note the management actions, reduce the overspend as set out in section 4 of this report. Can we get that correction?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Apologies, Mayor, the report obviously goes through that version and then it was not updated to the cabinet meeting, so apologies for that.
Okay, for cabinet members only, can we, are we agreeing the recommendations?
Yeah.
Agreed.
Agreed. Right, now we're moving to agenda item 7, and this relates to the departments of state. As you know, we've been mobilising the restoration and redevelopment of the Cobbs estate, which is a 28-acre site as the council in the heart of Stratford, and we've been working with residents that live on the estate who for a very long time have been down by the council considerations of the past, and we've worked really hard to rebuild trust, restore trust, and work in partnership with them on a really ambitious and amazing outline master plan that is going to literally create a new part of London over the coming 12 to 15 years. There's been some setting of the timelines for delivery because of programme delays, partly as a consequence of COVID-19, partly as a consequence of other matters as it relates to a James Riley point, which no doubt the officer who's here deputising for the corporate director can elaborate on. This report provides primarily an update on the progress against programme delivery that was previously approved in a cabinet report that came to cabinet in September 2023. At that point, we presented an update on the outline master plan we were waiting for approval, which we had consequently received from the London Legacy Development Corporation. We provided an update with regards to costs as it is caused by cost construction inflation, and also an update on other important matters. In this report, it's really need to draw your attention to a significant range of updates as set out in the recommendation section 2.1 all the way through to 16. There are a number of matters that are exempt, and I am going to ask cabinet members if you've got any questions as it relates to an exempt matter. I will take them in public. But I may have to stop you, subject to the signal I receive from Darren Mackin, because I may need to ask that question during a exempt session where I'm going to be available to the person public. And those will be in relation to matters to do with viability. You'll note that there is a table 4.10 that sets out the current position as it relates to viability of the different phases that this report is focused on. And in conclusion, in terms of my introductory remarks, we will be noting in this report that there has been a cost increase, but how that will be managed in relation to drawing down on decarbonisation and and through other approaches. So I'm going to pause there, and I'm going to invite Director of Community Work to talk today on the detail.
Thank you, Darren Mackin, Director of Community Wealth Building. So yeah, the Mayor said we last came to Cabinet in September 2023, where with a series of decisions around the next stages and delivery of the Providence Master Plan. At that time, we committed to coming back to Cabinet on an annual basis with viability updates, as well as any other wider updates on the strategy. So that's the purpose in today's report. The Mayor's mentioned there are a number of key changes that the report is Cabinet's approval for. One of them is the increased budget for phase one, which is shortly from 72 million to 98.3 million. That's said in the report driven by increased costs, inflation, delays due to CPO, and also some changes to building safety regulations that had to be factored into the design. It's worth noting that that increase has been offset by additional GLA grants to therefore pretty much being net, no change in overall costs to the council. The second key proposal set out is around Glutton Point. There's a proposal there to increase the density on that phase of the programme from 300 to 500 units. That does lead to a slight increase in planning budget, which is also requested in this paper. And then the third proposed change here is that the later phase on this joint proposal, so phase 3, is that for one of the elements of that, instead of the council taking forward the detailed design work, we'll pause that for now, with the potential for exploring and moving that forward with the partner, as part of the commercial strategy for the estate. And just one more point to point out as well, as mentioned, there's been an increase in table 4.2 around peak borrowing. The peak borrowing increase is driven by the fact that there's a slight prolongation of the programme as a result of the delays that the Mayor has mentioned, and obviously interest rates have increased since as construction costs. Overall, the programme remains viable for the council to continue based on the evidence we have available to us, just why the recommendations are to continue to proceed with the programme.
Okay, so I'm going to open up to questions. Colleagues, questions, please. Do you have any? I've got Councillor Charlie McLean and then I've got Councillor Blossom Young.
Brilliant, thank you, Chair, and thank you for that update, Darren. As I think in this room, I think only myself and Councillor Wilson were here from the beginning of the whole saga of Carpenters, which was a saga then, but now is a pretty successful story, I believe. As the Mayor mentioned, you know, residents have been taken along on the journey, which is something that's really, really important because, you know, there are a lot of people that have lived in the Carpenters estate since it was built. And they've stayed there, they've been pushed from pillar to post that it's going to happen, it's not going to happen. And now it's finally happening. And I just want, it's just a little plea really, just to remember the people that live on Carpenters, the people that died waiting for the regenerations happening, and it never did, but it's going, and they unfortunately have not been able to see that. People that lived in the towers, I could go to a lot about the different people that have passed away, but I won't mention any names. I just had a couple of questions about the in 4.46 of the report, where it speaks about the difference in the overall budget, and well done on receiving the money from the GLA to offset that. But in the table further down at 4.52, it just mentions about the PCSA stage A, and that which I don't know what that is, and I'd appreciate a bit of an explanation because it does mention that the cost consultant and contractor underestimated the complexity and cost, but what did they underestimate? Why did that sort of happen? Because 6.7 million is, in the scheme of things, it's not a lot, but in this financial situation, it's a fair amount. And I did have some other questions just about the vacant possession, but I will speak about that in the closed session because it's in the exempt papers. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Right.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, that's right. The GLP costs moved quite significantly from November 2021 to the last settlement report we had here in September 2023. And the main reason for that was that cost consultants did underestimate the programme as set out in the report, partly driven by the fact that this deep retrofitting approach is quite novel. It hasn't actually been done as far as we know anywhere else at this stage. So there is more uncertainty in delivering a project like this. I think the kind of important point to raise is at the moment these are budgets rather than spend, so the money hasn't been spent. And that as we go through the design process, we need certainty over the risks around this, and obviously we're monitoring all this.
Okay, fine. Right, I've got Councillor Blossom Young.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks very much for the report and Carpenters and the kind of wider regeneration of strategies of incredible importance in so many different ways. So it's good to see this progressing. I guess my question, I've got two questions. One is around kind of our level of confidence in these estimates and where we are now, knowing that the wider picture across London remains fairly uncertain in relation to generation schemes. And Also being aware that this is a much longer term programme, and while there is a request to kind of approve a series of go points at this stage, the ability for this cabinet to review and kind of pause, should that be a decision we wish to take in future?
Yeah, thank you for the question. Yes, so I guess with any, as you said there, Councillor, with any long-term regeneration programme, assumptions are made about costs at a point in time. And so we have cost consultants, we have various technical professionals provide us with that advice, and we take that advice on board in these assessments. That is reviewed at least annually, but on a 6 monthly basis, and possibly more within the project team. So we've got that continued oversight, but there are estimates and there is subjective change. I think the point around cabinet control is, yes, we're not proposing in this paper to enter into any construction contracts unless we get specific approval to do that in future. I think the other thing I would say is cabinet retain control over the strategy, and there were other things the cabinet could choose to do with the strategy that was decided at the time, like housing mix, commercial mix, and involvement in partners, to retain that element of control throughout.
Right, any other questions, please? I've got Councillor Zorka.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Darren, for quite a detailed comprehensive report. Clearly, this is a big project, major project, and we are regularly seeing progress report, and that is helpful. My question is around borrowing. Can we have some information in terms of the impact on the borrowing? Because if you look at table 8.2, it was peak borrowing was 1.1 million in September 23, and December 24 is 1.4 million, and obviously that's going to come next. Can we have some assurance with that regard, maybe perhaps Conrad?
Mayor, are you okay if I
Yeah.
response to that? So thank you for the question. As has been said, the nature of schemes like this, is usually dependent on the assumptions that one makes. None of us in this room know what will happen to interest rates or inflation or whatever over the next 10 years. We make these assumptions. So what you have in the table that's been highlighted is the current outputs of the viability model that pins this, that has been highlighted, shows that the scheme remains viable on those assumptions, around about 170 million net present value, but with peak borrowing increasing to that 1.4 figure, which is a substantial a combination of the various changes that we could see to the delivery strategy, the cost of this particular programme, and all the other matters set out in the report. And I've highlighted in particular, I think, in terms of those assumptions, interest rates are probably the one most important to look at. We've currently got 5.5% in the model. That sort of tracks the current assumption of a gradual reduction in interest rates over the next couple of years that the Bank of England forecasts. Clearly, that may not happen. And if it doesn't, and that we're going to see revised upwards, you would see significantly further viability challenges. But the critical thing in all of this is that although the borrowing does increase on the current model, being set out at the various decision points before major contracts are let or for whatever cabinet will have the opportunity to change strategy, for example, around a mix of sale or rent of private units and so on, in order to adjust those figures. And that provided that net present value figure remains as currently is, with a reasonably healthy positive figure, what that means is that those borrowing costs will be contained within the overall scheme rather than impacting directly on the services. But practically, that's the right way to matter. You report one of the significant risks that are just inherent in running a programme like that. But final point that I should make, if you're in the business of building houses, particularly for a scheme like this, there's a particular emphasis on trying to deliver more of a great proportion of affordable housing than the market will deliver. else, and that is that there are financial risks associated with it, in the reporting borrower and so on. Substantial benefit was hopeful from that, you weigh against those risks. But it is absolutely right to highlight those as we do, while all the reports are through this decision point, so that each critical stage, Cabinet can determine whether to continue with the programme currently recommended or to make changes to the strategy in this through changing. A slightly lengthy answer now, apologies for that, but that was important to pull those points out. I'm happy, of course, to take any other questions on that part of it.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, are there any other things? I'm going to propose that, there are a couple of questions as it relates to liability that I know, which to be asked. And also there is actually on the question on the concrete, do you want to ask a question on concrete?
Yeah, so I know at post 6.5 under risk, it does mention about the concrete, that the concrete possibly may not be in this. No, not sorry, I'll rephrase that. It says that the concrete not be expected condition, that there wouldn't be any additional costs. There wouldn't be any significant costs apart from, it says what it says at 6.5 about concrete. And it just stood out to me because I do recall that previously, I recall that there hasn't been any mention of the concrete not being in a fit state. I know that we've done initial preliminary tests, and the concrete was proven to be okay. That's why we were going down this pathway. I do know previously that when the original plans for carpenters were in place and the blocks were due to be coming down due to the I can't believe how many times I said this phrase in this chamber, concrete eating ants, and that it wasn't a sound structure, but it's just jumped out at me that actually maybe it's not. So that was my question, if you can find a question in that.
Yeah, would you let me comment on that?
Yes, please.
Yes, thank you for that question. And yeah, there's been a number of surveys that have been carried out on the pre-tower blocks at the carpenters. So the survey results get back that GLP is potentially a good candidate for deep retrofit, which is why the detailed design strategy was created and the work has been underway to do that. I think what the report is highlighting is that this is quite an overall project. There is a risk, of course, that when the work was deeper into the building, issues arise. So it's just important, I think, to flag that as part of any kind of good due diligence on projects like this. The kind of overarching point would be if that work would be discovered, then the building itself would need a new strategy, and for example, you then look at demolition or whatever else. So again, there would be a checkpoint, there would be a decision that would need to be taken on how to see that issues like that was.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, fine, thank you very much. So are there any other questions? No? All right, super. I am going to just everyone's attention to the recommendations.
We're not.
No,
We're not going to close session.
Oh, exempt, sorry.
Exempt. Yeah, we're all.
Okay, so we're going to be going to an exempt. Agenda item 17, which sets out the exclusion of press and public to result in for the item number 7 of the business, to the extent that exempt information as described in part 1 of schedule 12A of the Local Act 1972 is likely to be disclosed. Can we agree to exclude the press and public, cabinet members only? Yes, thank you very much. John, could you let us know when the broadcast is?
So we can't stop it, but we can put it all on. job of doing treatment. Bear with me.
Welcome back, colleagues, to the public session of this formal meeting of Cabinet. Members of the public and members of the press that will have been watching via our YouTube channel. We were, as Cabinet and the wider executive, still on the Cabinet paper, agenda item 7, which relates to the restoration and regeneration of the Carpenters Estate programme update. We were wanted to ask questions as it relates to some key items, the exempt appendices, and specifically exempt appendix A as it relates to the master plan viability update. And also a couple of questions as it related to exempt appendix C, JRP, cost plan analysis, and exempt appendix E, vacant protection strategy. I just wanted to also advise in this public cabinet that we've noted the formatting and numbering of appendices has been using. For the purposes of the record of decisions taken on this now, just wanted to advise colleagues that we'll capture in the minutes clarity around a non-exempt appendix G, which relates to recommendation 2.3 on page 225 of the substantive non-exempt report. And similarly, what we will do is just provide an explanation as to which pages all the appendices are in, including those exempt appendices, for the interests of transparency and clarity, and noting that some of the exempt items, if you were to access them, if you've got a authorization to access exempt appendices online, we have detected a user experience issue that we will resolve, but the exempt appendices are also online in the designated exempt appendices section for this report via mod.gov. Yeah. Now coming to the recommendations, before I head into the recommendations, are there any final comments before we move on? No? I'm going to just invite Darren to do some concluding remarks, and particularly Darren, in the context of subject to approval formally, around the timeline of the Carpenters Estate Restoration Regeneration Programme. What timeframe are we looking at now, and what will we be able to point to as a discernible shift in activity and things emerging, including meanwhile projects that the estates and other residents living in and around Stratford can see? Are you able to elaborate, and then I'll go to recommendations?
Yeah, sure, thank you. So yeah, the Meanwhile Use project, the arrival on site has been installed on site of the train carriage, which is going to be a community cafe that's due to open in the spring, early summer, and there'll be activation around that. There'll be further work on some cabins that are going to be like a box spot, not box spot, but that sort of event that's going to be launched on the next 12 months as well. Some businesses, residents and opportunities up there. Because the Meanwhile Use strategy is progressing separately to the wider development work. And then on GRP specifically, subject to CPO, you should be able to start seeing progress on site there in around 6 months.
Okay, super.
Drilling for those
Right, thank you very much. Right, so recommendations, colleagues, if you can note the 16 recommendations that are set out across page 195 and the top of 197. The The only thing that I wanted to clarify is as it relates to the pull down of the social housing decarbonisation fund, where it's got delegate authority to corporate resources in consultation with lead member to approve the social housing decarbonisation fund application for grant funding. Is that because it's a grant as it relates to just transition and climate emergency? I'm just a bit confused why it's director of resources and not in consultation with yourself and other cabinet members. Right, go on.
So my understanding of this recommendation is that the cabinet would need to make any decision around receiving grant money. So this is about experience really. So it means if and when the grant's awarded, we can get a non-key decision report signed off by the corporate director of resources. So it's just about ensuring the.
Yeah. No, I appreciate the efficiency point. It's just why it is director of finance. What is that because the corporate director of finance is also the section 151 statutory? I have no idea. I don't also understand why it's not in consultation with, because it's social housing. It should be with, Blossom, because it's part of our council estate, and also with me overseeing the overall programme. I just don't understand it. Right, comrades.
I think you can amend it to add other consultees if you want. That doesn't present any sort of problem. I think it was simply drafted that way. No particular intent other than the fact that social housing decarbonisation sits within the climate change, that therefore sits within my department. It's not because of any particular secretary, it's not problematic at all to add in consultation with any other members that you think appropriate.
Okay, fine. So can we just insert in consultation with after the lead member for finance, the lead member for housing landlord and tenant experience improvements, and the lead member for inclusive economy and strategic housing delivery. Okay, thank you. So subject to those, that just can we approve recommendations? Is that agreed, cabinet members?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. Agenda item 8. Investing in our homes, storing decent homes works for tenants. I'm going to pass it over to Blossom Young, and Blossom, the director, is being deputised for by, is it David Padfield? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Colleagues will be aware that we are undergoing a significant improvement programme for our homes, and this paper is in that vein. We take our commitments to providing our residents with a safe and secure home very seriously, and have an obligation to maintain the approximately 16,000 social tenant and homes we maintain to ensure that they meet the decent home standard. We've got an ongoing programme of works to make improvements to the quality of these homes, and have had that for some time. And in particular, we have obligations to periodically upgrade kitchens, bathrooms, heating systems, windows, doors and roofing. It's important we make improvements in these areas because they can lead to better environmental and energy efficiency for our tenants, which will assist in the delivery of our Just Transition Plan and can help to address fuel poverty. This is, of course, also part of our response to the regulator of social housing's judgment. And as such, what we're bringing today is really an acceleration of our planned programme of delivery. So we want to bring properties up to decent home standard, and we need to do that quicker than our programme has been previously. For us to be able to do that, we need a really efficient and effective route to deliver the programme of our works. And so we're proposing bringing in external contractors to assist in delivery of this. This report sets out the proposed approach to procurement of the contracts, the programme of works, and seeks approval for up to £18 million to be used for this, sourced within existing budgets. It's important we do this. So the decent home standard is important in residents having safe and secure homes that are appropriate for their needs. And that we're periodically making those additional improvement works in key areas. We need to accelerate that process. One of the things that we found, or that was found as part of the regulatory judgment, is there's around 20% of our homes which currently don't meet the decent home standards. So that's why it's really important that we're doing this work now. And that's around just over 3,400 properties in terms of this particular process. We're proposing to bring contractors in. We want to do that over geographic contracts, so more than one contractor, certainly focused in particular areas to try and deploy the resource as effectively as we can. Because we've been doing this work for a period of time, the team have got a very good understanding about what the costs are for sets of work for windows, kitchens, bathrooms, doors, electrical systems, so on. So the intention is to use a kind of basket rate model. So what would be the average cost for a 1-bedroom flat for these works, 2-bedroom flat, 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom, etc. And then to invite contractors to price on that basis. The report sets this out in more detail. And yeah, I would just urge Cabinet to approve the recommendations.
Okay. Cabinet, I'm going to invite any critical questions. Are there? I've got Councillor Anne Easton.
Thank you. Anne Easton, one of the councillors for Royal Albert Ward, which is so often, sadly, the ward that time forgot. And so I particularly welcome this on behalf of our residents there. I see that you hope that the work would be done by March 28. That's 3 years from now. How confident are you? Are we aware of the extent?
So I think I'll bring David in a moment, but I urge colleagues to see this as part of the wider programme that we're going through with the regulator. So yes, this may seem like a very long time frame. Of course, we are, as well as doing Decent Homes programme, also investing in our repairs to reduce that backlog, particularly addressing fire safety and remedial works there, and a number of kind of building safety improvement work that is already happening. So I think that, you know, the team have been doing a lot of work in understanding the timeframes for delivery of each of those elements and how that balances against each other. So yes, I think there's reasonable assurance, but you know, I think there's a lot around what is being put in place to kind of quality assure the work of contractors and make sure that we're keeping on a programme track. So I'd expect this to be under periodic review. Also, I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that.
That's entirely correct. The only thing that I would add to that is obviously in order to deliver this large capital programme, plus all the other things that Councillor Young has identified and are crucial in terms of our response to the regulator, we are in the process of building our capacity to deliver capital investments at that scale. So in terms of getting confidence, it's dependent on that process being successful.
I think most of us know that most building schemes that we know of have gone on a bit long, but I hope not too. Thank you.
Okay,
just a very brief from what Councillor Young has said about contractors being monitored, and you know, could you just explain how you intend to do that? Because we know work gets done, the quality of work, and contractors coming back and feedback that work is completed. How are we going to be assuring that the work is done to a quality that has been expected?
Absolutely. So this is certainly something that I'm working on with the team at the moment, because clearly on this and on the fire safety work that we approved in January, we're looking at a different route, and a route which is not all about in-house delivery. And I think part of David's reference to capacity is very much about gearing ourselves up in a way that's about managing this slightly differently to the way that we have done before. So certainly kind of meetings with those contractors and the appointed contractors, making sure that we're seeing key data in terms of how quickly they are moving, what the quality of the work is. We've had discussions around spot inspections, for example, and making sure that we're visiting and assuring for ourselves and for our residents also. So I don't know if you want to add anything to that, David, but yeah.
Again, perhaps when we talk about building capacity, we having adequate numbers of property managers, project managers, and adequate governance systems around the project to ensure that the work is done according to the specifications that we want. In addition to that, we probably need to strengthen our capacity in terms of other works provision. So at the moment, that works provision is outsourced to an external contractor. That is something we're looking at in the future, considering the option of building up that capacity.
Okay. Can I just add something? I'm really pleased that windows are replaced and windows checks are going to be done.
Okay, any other questions? No, I can't see any, so I'm going to be just moving on to the recommendations on big page number 318. You'll note for the reasons set out in the report and its appendices, Cabinet has recommended to agree 2.1, the decent home standard improvement works HRA housing stock as described in this report at section 4 proposals to be undertaken by way of programme works. 2.2, to delegate authority to the corporate director of inclusive economy, housing and culture in consultation with the lead member for housing, landlord and tenant experience improvements. To 2.2.1, commence and approve the procurement process for up to 4 contracts for the programme of decent home standard works for the council's HRA housing stock up to a total cost envelope of 18 million. 2.2.2 to award the contract subject to their combined value not exceeding the budgetary envelope of 18 million pounds. Is that agreed, colleagues?
Agreed.
There's one thing that I have said previously, we can pick it up outside, where you've got some of our housing stock neighbouring our affordable homes, the new delivery and new schemes. Is there a way in which we can look at sinking the upgrade of the estates, because we've got to start avoiding the situation in neighbourhoods where we're investing millions of pounds to build brand new, well-designed stock, and then estates is still being left to fester and there's not. So I appreciate there's a prioritisation matrix that you apply, but I've spoken about it a number of times now, and I don't know whether or not that's sufficiently built into programme thinking. Right, let's move on. We've got agenda item 9. So, colleagues, this is relating to the holiday activity and food programme for 2025-2028. You'll note that the paper lists as lead member Councillor Melanie Onovo, who was formerly the Cabinet Member for Youth, and as mentioned at the start of this meeting, she regretfully stepped down. So I'm going to be presenting this report. I'm going to say 2 things. One, I'm going to be presenting this report in her honour, because we have lost a great talent in the Cabinet, and I know that she was very passionate about all things young people. And the second reason why, the second point that I wanted to make as part of my introductory remarks is, in the context of Newham, given where our resident communities are as it relates to not their physical location, but the material condition of their lives, we know that too many households are exposed to the damaging and corrosive impacts of poverty and inequality. And as an administration since 2018, it has been a fundamental aspect of what we do under the auspices of now building a fairer Newham, then people at the heart of what we do during COVID-19 towards a better Newham, and all of our corresponding complementary strategies, that we are anti-poverty first and foremost, and fairness, and we that even at this juncture of the 21st century, despite this seeming to be more of a feature, or our assumptions of a feature in the global south, poverty in terms of food poverty, food insecurity is a lived experience of so many households. Households with children and people that we should be horrified and shocked. The holiday activity with food programme that we've been delivering over recent years is a testament to our enduring to tackle sustainable increase of poverty and to give families, households, and people a hand. We are enabling as an administrator. We are not wanting to institute a dependency culture that draws criticism from nebulous forces that exist in our country that try to stoke fear and project an antagonism towards those to access our support. We're doing this in combination with a whole raft of different anti-poverty strategies, enabling people to gain skills, access jobs, be paid well through a London living wage. We're incubating a vibrant, inclusive and dynamic economy. It was said earlier in relation to the performance, quarterly performance report for a place like Newham is exceptional, but we are achieving such high educational outcomes. Actually, it's not exceptional. It's to be expected, given the nature and the character of the people that live in this borough and who we are. Poverty and inequality is not holding back their aspirations and their ambitions for themselves and for their children. And I think the holiday activity and food programme is amongst the best examples of how we use funding not to stigmatise children and families, but to empower them, to make them realise that they are being cared for, supported by a council and administration that believes every single child and young person has the entitlement and basic human rights and to have available and open to them a whole raft of opportunities. And that's the reason why I will continue defending everything that we do through the youth power endeavour and youth empowerment service. I think it's commendable that the youth empowerment service has been at the front line of delivering this, because they see very much what's happening on the ground in collaboration with the voluntary community and faith sector partners. And it is really important that we're doing that with partners in terms of ensuring that the holiday activity and food programme grant that we've received from us and will be receiving for the period set out in the report, that's 2025 to 2028, is as expansive as it can be within the budgets that we've got. I know that at times it's been a challenge for some of our voluntary community and faith sectors to undertake the outreach. And there's been points at which that money has had to be returned.
No, nothing more to add, but thank you for that glowing overview of HAF. Very much appreciate that.
Okay, super. Right, is there anything, Gloria, you wanted to say?
No, nothing to add, Mayor, just to say that we have got confirmation of the exact amounts, which was predicted really well by Esther and her team. So it's £2,049,110, 2,000 more than last year, which is good. But given the rise of preschool meals, it doesn't necessarily equate, but at least we've got, you know, the same as last year.
Okay, are there any questions? Right, I've got Councillor Neil Wilson, Councillor Mumtaz Khan, Councillor Anne Easter, and then Madeline. Yeah, Neil.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. You've referenced already nutrition and physical health and the importance of those in terms of the school holidays, but also in 3.1, the children affected with unhealthy holidays, right, report in speech mark, or about less likely to access organised out of school activities and more likely to experience social isolation. All of those factors are well known. This is a contribution, as you say, Mayor, towards some of that delivery for those children thus affected. And I just wanted to flag up that I think it's an important point for those of us who represent the local authority, school governors, that in 4.6, the maintained schools will be invited to express an interest in delivering HAF provision. Experience of interest will be assessed against that framework of standards clearly, and maintained schools will submit submissions. There is clear reference, to schools board of governors, and we've had discussions in this council for quite a while that school governors are the decision makers. And speaking as a chair of finance of 2, I think it's important that we do actually make certain school governors have that decision making and be alerted to it, as well as head teachers who are quite clearly the senior officer present at such meetings. So it was more of a statement than a question, Chair, but I think it's important that we do link those two elements about governors and the way that they are also, by the way, the largest volunteer group in the country, encouraged to actually decide this provision for the good of our young people, especially in these school holiday times. Thanks.
Okay, fine. I'm going to take Mumtaz.
Thank you, Chair. I really welcome this report. I think it is going to be such a wealth of resource for some of our families. School is a safe haven for most of our children, where there are overcrowding. Some of our children experience or are witnessing domestic abuse at home. When schools are off, I think, the fact that we are able to provide this facility, this program, which has been very successful and we want to continue. So I just wanted to commend the work that's gone in for us to.
Okay, fine.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
How are we going to make sure that post-16s are included in this scheme? If they, anyway.
I'm gonna pass over to Esther because there's specificity in terms of the holiday and food programme in terms of age. And in the context of post-16, that's been picked up under the auspices of our wider food insecurity strategy, which will be subject to review in any case. And I know that in some of our spaces that young people occupy, specifically our youth zones, there's a emphasis around how we enable them to both learn about the joy of cooking and have access to nutritious meals, because of the knowledge that young people similarly and issues. We know that as it relates to secondary school kids, there's a lot of work that needs to be done in encouraging presentations as it relates to the funding already available for school outside of our programme that we offer, which is and yeah, there's a lot to be done around mobilising our food security strategy better. I don't know if there's anything.
It's not in the grant criteria, but it's something that we raise when we meet with, you know, the Department for Education, because sometimes their grants and their allocations narrow down so much. It's not most helpful, but some 16-year-olds, because it's up to year 11.
Yep.
So you are 16 and a bit or a half.
Madeline.
Thank you. Councillor Madeline Sugg, Westgate South, Deputy Cabinet Member for Education. Really welcome the report. I was very lucky to be able to go and visit a large number of the HAF projects in the summer and see children across the borough in many different locations, from parks to fixed sites to school and community facilities, taking great pleasure in being part of the HAF project and seeing a real boost to their community and how they felt about themselves, and as well as gaining good nutrition during the holidays. What I wanted to check was that one of the issues for the government is to ensure that we have the capacity to only use 10% of the grant for administrative costs. Is that something that we've been able to, or we feel we're able to meet?
Yes, 100%.
Good.
Yeah, okay. Anything else? No? All right, let's move to the for the reasons set out in the report, Cabinet has recommended 3.1, agree the acceptance of the anticipated amount of circa 2 million DFE for the delivery of the HAF programme for the Easter, summer, Christmas holidays in 2025. And also just know the actual amount that we received was 2,300,000.
£2,049,110.
Okay, we'll note that in the records as well. And 2.2, delegate authority to the corporate director of children and young people in consultation with the lead portfolio holder of youth power. That should be right. Or should to accept the grant funding from the FE for the school holidays in 2026, 2028. Yeah? Is that agreed, everyone?
Agreed.
Okay, fine. Right, let's move on to SEND, Special Educational Needs and Disabilities Capital Investment. Councillor Sarah Ruse.
Thank you very much. Members will remember that in 2022 and probably in 2018 as well, but we made a commitment in our manifesto to provide the best educational opportunity for our children and young people, and the best right here at home in Newham. Really important that our young people remain within their home communities. It creates friendship circles And it also means that they don't spend half their time travelling in a cab. And we would like them close to families and existing support networks. This report highlights our dedication to an inclusive education and seeks approval for capital allocations from existing DFE funded grants, additional investment in specialist provision to ensure that education in the borough continues to be inclusive and that all children and young people have equal opportunity to thrive in their educational setting, supported to achieve success in society and the world of work. We have worked with our family of schools, with parents and carers, and as importantly, our young commissioners to co-produce and identify the projects for investment that will deliver the best SEND provision for our children and young people. Additional specialist places are an investment which will enable the avoidance of both high out-of-borough placement costs and children and young people being placed in less inclusive settings outside of Newham. I believe that Peter has joined us. Peter has been responsible for this programme from start to finish, so I don't know whether to go through the chair, but Peter, do you wish to add anything?
Peter, would you anything?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Rosen. We went through a thorough process to shortlist the providers for following this expression of interest process. It was really helpful that we had the input from both parent care representatives and the young commissioners, and that there was a concurrence of views about which were the strongest projects to shortlist. The projects that we are recommending will very much meet the need that we have identified that are growing for our children and young people, particularly around autism and those children and young people with profound and multiple learning difficulties. It will also create more provision for young people over the age of 16, which was particularly identified as an area that we needed to develop in the Ofsted SEND area inspection last year. So we believe that these proposals will significantly enhance our inclusive provision and avoid children and young people having to travel out of borough.
Okay, super. Thank you very much. Do we have any? Oh, sorry. Did you want to say something, Madeline? Yeah.
No, I was going to make a comment afterwards.
Oh, okay, cool. Any questions? Yeah. Go
on. First, big thanks to everybody for the work that's been taken part in this. The government was very generous with giving grants before Christmas for the building of capacity within buildings with our current sites and our new sites, which, because of the work that's been undertaken by the team SEN, was waiting in there to actually receive the grants, which I hope will to capitalise on this work. It's really great that there's going to be an extra 34 places across the borough for students with autism and found multiple learning difficulties, in addition to actually bringing back particularly into Newham those places that are needed for 16 plus. As somebody that's worked at PMLD and ASD schools where some children are travelling up to 2 hours each way in cabs with, you know, not always with an attendant or an assistant with them. That it really is something to end in terms of the and deregulation that students, as well as the concern all around the parents when their children are out of their sight for that time, even though they are with somebody with DBS check, but also because it means that should there be a problem with transport, which can occur, people are only human, it means that their children are stuck at least a 4-hour round trip away for them to be able to go and collect them if they have people. So this is really, really needed, desired, wanted, and it also continues Newham's clear focus and attention to an inclusive facilities within the borough in terms of those schools that can apply for increasing their inclusion responsibilities and duties, but also for those students within the borough with high needs, very high needs, to be able to stay within their local community, grow up with their friends, their neighbours and their family close by them. So thank you for every hard work.
So I can't make anything else. I've got recommendations. Big page number 336 to the top of 337, so that's it's recommended to agree 2.1 all the way through to 2.4. Cabinet members only is that opinions. Now we're moving to agenda item 11. This is People Health Programme 2025-27. So I'm going to invite Councillor Shani McLean to introduce this.
Brilliant, thank you, Chair. Councillor Shani McLean, Cabinet Member of Resident Engagement and Resident Experience, and my friend here has just pointed out how long our report is, because there's lots of appendices and lots of information there.
Appendices key.
And lots of information there for people to peruse through, and I hope that colleagues have all read all of the information that's been provided for you from our evaluation. So I wanted to start by thanking you, Mayor, for your vision back in 2018 for become a beacon of participatory democracy. No, it's not for, it's a good thing, it's a positive thing. So there was a recommitment again to the vision in 2022 manifesto, and People Power Places is now the primary vehicle through which we as a council fulfilled this commitment. Yeah, we're getting to that bit about award winning. So this initiative empowers residents to decide how to allocate part of the council's neighbourhood community infrastructure levy funds. So by involving community residents in this decision-making process, we enable them to influence and co-produce local priorities, facilitating a democratic distribution of public funds for initiatives that residents identify. And residents have a unique understanding of which projects will benefit their communities most. So it's only fair for them to have a direct say in how these funds are used. Over the 6-year programme, we have uncovered new methods for tackling issues, enabling residents to implement impactful projects across the borough. PPP funding has supported over 300 resident groups, charities, social enterprises, faith organisations and voluntary and community organisations, reflecting diverse experiences. This has shown that our communities possess a wealth of knowledge, skills and resources, and that residents are in a solid position to identify and address their needs to improve their neighbourhoods. Participation rates in the programme are encouraging, indicating a strong desire for further community empowerment. Over 10,000 residents took part in the voting process alone. This programme has significantly expanded its work with external partners in this cycle. The partnership with the Royal Docs team has proven mutually beneficial, with the team committing to continued funding and collaboration. Networking events have also fostered connections with over 20 key organisations, including funders, project developers, academic institutions and infrastructure support organisations, creating a foundation for further partnerships in the next cycle if this report is approved today. The People Powered Places programme's reputation as a leader in participatory democracy has grown significantly, generating interest not only from many other local authorities looking to develop their participatory budgeting initiatives. We were recently invited to conduct a seminar to 80 civil servants in national government to explain how we do what we do. Go Vocal, the developer of Noon Co-Create, ranked People Power Places as the top project for digital participation in 2023 and the most engaged project globally. And just to show you the scale of that, Go Vocal works in 500 plus local governments and organisations across 20 countries. So in 2024, we were the best of all of them. Okay, so in October 2024, People Power Places was also selected for the Democratic Innovation Accelerator, a prestigious EU-funded programme run by the US-based People Powered and the European-based Net for Dems. The Democratic Innovation Accelerator supports innovative participatory democracy initiatives across 11 countries. We are part of that. The report also includes several recommendations, one for the extensive evaluation that was undertaken, hence my learned friend here showing how thick the report was because we take this very, very seriously. The key outcome of this evaluation is allocating funding to ensure it is distributed more equitably for resident-led projects, especially those focused on or led by young people. Lastly, I want to express my gratitude to all the working group members for their dedication, local knowledge and hard work, as well as to the councillors and senior officers who have supported this programme, the community neighbourhoods teams that facilitate it and guided everyone through the various stages of the initiative, and also the participatory democracy team who hold it all together. Lastly, planning colleagues who believed in people, power, places, but most importantly, the residents who have participated in the programme and have embraced the process wholly. I'll leave it there for now, Chair, but just to say, people, power, places, your voices, your choices, your neighbourhood. Thank you. Love it, love it, love it.
I don't know whether I should be exact innovation.
Yeah.
Okay, are there any questions? I just think we should note this report.
No.
Okay, I've got a question, not a comment, a statement and a contribution, because you want to, you know, convey your appreciation of what's been achieved. It's a question.
But it's a lot of work has gone into this. We shouldn't just pass it off.
I know, and we're celebrating, and that's why I was suggesting standing ovation. Everyone wanted.
That's why I was suggesting a comment.
Yeah, anyway, question.
Wow.
Councillor Solly.
For those residents who have been really involved in the democratic participation and engagement that People, Power, Places offers.
Yeah.
Is there a steps kind of progression ladder for them to move onto or move within the People, Power, Places system to help them become advocates or help them become community coordinators?
Good question.
Good question, Sally Pontian. Before I bring officers in, I'll just let you know that there are people that have taken part in different parts of the process throughout the different cycles. So you've got people who were working group members who have now decided that actually they'll put through a project themselves that's been very successful. There's people who put through projects and are now councillors. There's people that have engaged in all different parts of the process, and there's opportunities because that is what Noon's all about. But Sadia, I don't know if you wanted to add anything to that.
Absolutely. So in the new cycle that we've developed, one of the key recommendations is the introduction of an alumni network recognising the journey that our residents and community project leads have been on. And as part of the alumni network, we will provide some training for them to continue on that journey. They will also mentor new projects, they will share their valuable learnings, and they will continue to work with us to shape and share and develop the programme. So I think that's a really critical way, and it's also to recognise the journey that some residents have been on. So as Councillor McLean mentioned, there are many ways for our residents to get involved in the programme, and we have absolutely seen some residents take part in just coming along to our events, but they've then been inspired to perhaps apply for some funding. We've had residents take part in some of our projects who have then gone on to be project leads. So there is certainly a journey for our residents in community leadership.
Well done.
Fantastic.
Good question, Mary.
I just think on that point around ongoing development of vis-a-vis community leadership, and again, in the context of transformation of this organisation and a one council approach, as part of the review that's going to be as part of the review aspects of this next phase of the programme, when considering and reflecting on delivering on states, there does need to be something around how it's aligned to pathways into skills and employment, because it's a skill that they're acquiring. And actually, in the context of some of the concerns that have been raised by members around the current state of the relationship of the council with the community-based sector, different parts of the council are trying to bring that together as part of the voluntary sector and community sector strategy, how this can also help support that, but we can pick that up outside. Yeah, but well done. Right, I'm going to suggest that we move to the recommendation, big page number 3.1. For the reason
shining, Chair.
Another sign of how glorious you are.
Yeah, the lights filtering through.
Recommendations 2.1, for the reasons set out in the report list appendices, Cabinet is recommended to agree from 2.2 to 2.6. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed. Now moving on to, what we're getting there.
Thank you, officer.
Yeah.
Thank you, officers. We've now got to agenda item
12.
We've got delivering
Go
safe
then.
public safe protection orders, alcohol related safe behaviour. Over to Arnold Birding.
Thank you, Chair. Just want to formally introduce this paper, which is the renewal of our PSPOs related to alcohol and adult related issues and control. Our PSPO is coming to expiry, so hence this paper is being passed and presented to Cabinet. It's one of our key aspects of keeping residents safe and our parks safe. As you know, we've got areas of concern where we've got dangerous dogs in our borough and repeated issues of people causing antisocial behaviour when it comes to alcohol-related issues. The PSPO provides one tool that we might use as a council in terms of preventative work that we do, and working with partners in adults and social care when it comes to preventative work that we want to deliver. We recognise that Newham generally, for many people, is a safe place, but recognise there are components where people try to change that landscape. This paper sets out some of the work that we've done in compared to other councils and benchmarking as well. And there's appendices from A to G for reference if people want to check. In terms of strategic focus, I think the council and directorates has changed this way in terms of our approach. We look at community safety, the NICE Newham integrated community enforcement is our approach that we've taken to try and change the landscape of how we keep our residents safe. And working with colleagues in community wealth building and highways, placemaking our environments to ensure some of the level of ASB that would normally be there is not there. So this paper sets out in terms of sort of providing reassurance that this PSPO tool is, I'd suppose, in that instance. And similarly in terms of some of the other work that we're doing to tackle some of the wider ASB issues. I can't see anybody online, but I'm supported with Alison Sherwood, who is the lead officer on this report, and Corporate Director Aled Richards, if they want to add anything further. Thank you, Chair.
No, I don't. I have nothing else to add. Good summary.
Fine. All right, so are there any questions? Right, I've got Councillor Neil Woods. Questions, remember, colleagues. Madeline Sarli-Ponting.
Would you agree there is a close correlation between the areas identified in the table around alcohol ASB enforcement and those known to us in terms of the rough sleeping pathway, for instance, as an exemplar, Canning Town flyover, and that there is good partnership working with CGL partners within public health, because drug-related and alcohol related issues do contribute to some of the most vulnerable in our.
Yep. Yeah, thank you, Councillor Wilson. Yeah, definitely. I think some of the officers that you'll see on the ground that are involved in a lot of this work, the due diligence of training and problem solving approaches is really testament. And what you'll see in terms of some of the support that they'll find with, as you see, vulnerable residents on streets that are rough sleepers that need that wider support, and that proactive work in terms of partners like CGL, Hestia, that will refer them to that. I think this is more of a preventative mechanism that we have to look at in terms of what we're trying to do to ensure that residents are safe, but then taking that tough line approach where we would need to issue FPNs for those that don't adhere. I think if you look at the level of interventions that have taken place and other wider pathways that we need to create for residents that need that support when it comes to alcohol and substance misuse, is really important at this moment in time. As you've seen over not just COVID, but the cost of living crisis, the level of alcohol increase that we've seen. So it's fundamentally important that those partners that we're working, statutory partners as well, with the Met Police, do their due diligence. And some of the change and reform that they've put into place when it comes to substance misuse, and especially drugs. Project Adder is an example of that, and how outreach is going to place a worship on the ground to support residents when it comes to this sort of work. And the wider drug Drugs Partnership Board that myself, Councillor Wilson, Councillor Ruiz are all involved in terms of tackling some of those hard-hitting issues. Yeah, but yeah, it's definitely interlinked. Yeah.
Okay, councillor.
Councillor Madeline Sutherland, Voice Council. Very grateful the work that your team and Councillor Lewis's teams do with regards to public safety around street cleaning, etc. On Love Clean Streets, there is a choice when you're saying that a street needs cleaning, and mentioning that it's dog fouling or that it's sharps and needles.
Yeah.
But there isn't an option for glass around bench areas. I've actually had a email today from a resident about such a case.
Yeah.
Is it possible maybe to add that to Love Clean Streets as splash glass?
Don't control of clean streets, we could put that as a suggestion for the operators.
Yeah, okay. Thank you for the suggestion.
I am not going to.
No, if you don't want to pick any, but sort of a question, but I can always ask Emma.
Okay, fine.
In the essence of time.
It's just this is a cabinet meeting, it's on the cabinet papers as opposed to statements. Because, yeah, there is a point of time as well. Are there any other comments? Well, I'm going to suggest that we move to the recommendations set out in the appendices. Cabinet is recommended to agree. 2.1, implementation of the proposed bottle line PSPO alcohol appendix A commenced 23rd of February, expired 26th and 2.2 to the implementation of the bottle line PSPO for document appendix B commenced 23rd of February 2025, it expired 22nd of February 2028. Is that agreed, cabinet members? That's agreed. Moving on to the next cabinet paper, which is procurement of electric vehicle charge points. This is Councillor Sarah Rose.
Thank you very much, Chair. As you members will be aware, we have been actively working to tackle pollution and improve the environmental quality of the borough. And with one of the key challenges being the reduction of vehicle emissions. Part of our ongoing efforts, we are committed to supporting the transition to electric vehicles, which is a vital step towards lowering emissions and improving air quality. Increasingly, our residents are embracing electric vehicles, and to support this, we genuinely need to build the necessary charging infrastructure. The scheme will see Newham's total number of EV chargers rise, sorry, 2,135, making considerable progress towards our target of 3,000 by 2030. So we've got another 5 years to get the last remainder. Therefore, we meeting future demand as more people transition towards electric vehicles by the UK government's zero emissions vehicles mandate, where all new cars and vans must be electric by 2030. Given the financial pressures on local government, particularly following a decade of austerity, it has become more challenging for councils to invest in infrastructure independently. As a result, we have sought innovative solutions, including securing alternative funding and forming strategic partnerships with neighbouring London boroughs, Redbridge and Waltham Forest, to jointly procure the EV charging infrastructure. This collaborative procurement approach aligns with Newham's broader sustainability agenda and our commitment to supporting residents in their transition to electric vehicles. We will continue to explore partnerships and funding opportunities to help us meet our environmental goals and ensure a cleaner, greener future for our community. Charles is here. Charles, is this you? Yeah. Charles is here. Mayor, should you wish him to answer any questions?
That you wish to add?
I'm Charles Makundu, from the Highways and Traffic Team. Thank you, Councillor Ruiz, and I'll just add that this project does present an opportunity for us to catch up with other local authorities. You recall a couple of years ago, we were behind the curve in terms of rolling out electric platforms. But with this project, we'll be able to catch up and be closer to achieving our goals. I think it just, if our just left to meet our daily targets, and the authorities that we're working with, they're also proactive, and we work with them on a separate scheme, which is the Levi pilot scheme, in terms of bidding for fund for that. But in terms of delivery, it's been done it differently. But why we're going for joint procurement on this is because this is one of the requirements from DFT for funding these projects. Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Right, so are there any questions? I've got Councillor John. I've got Councillor Shannon.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor John Whitworth, West Ham Ward, member for Air Quality and Climate Emergency. This is a very welcome initiative that will multiply the number of charges, and as you say, will enable us to catch up and presumably meet demand. I have a question there. We have some figures of projections of new and need made from 2020, and also figures about the number of electric and hybrid vehicles. But I wonder, are there any estimations at what point the number of chargers will meet the estimated demand?
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, thank you, Councillor John Whitworth. According to the projections that we have, estimates that go to 2041, we expect that the numbers that we have achieved by 2041 are the right numbers to meet future demand.
We're on the right directory.
Yes.
Trajectory, let's see.
Yes,
Okay, right, any other questions? Charlie?
Oh, yeah, thank you, Chair. This is amazing, another example of us, our manifesto commitments that we made and over exceeding them. My question is just, because I know this is a procurement report, but how you will choose where these electric charging points are going to go? I mean, I know that on the new website you can sort of suggest places where you can put charging points, but I know there are some parts of the borough that have nothing at all. And you know, electric vehicle ownership is definitely going up, that drive for a living. And so I was just wondering if you could reassure residents as to how they can have more input where these charging points can go.
Yeah, thank you. We have criteria that we are using for selecting the sites, and one of them is to ensure that we have equitable different wards. However, note that because we, at the beginning of this program, at the moment, we're looking to meet demand. So we're looking at where people are requesting for this, but the other criteria that we have to look at, we have to consider safety, we have to consider environmental impact, and also project. Also, we do carry out special consultation with the residents as well as key stakeholders regarding the of these sites.
Can I just add, we've done our first draft of a strategic policy in terms of the allocation of EV charging points, which we are proofreading, and then we will have a discussion with the cabinet member and take that forward.
Okay.
Can I also add, we were also looking to ensure that we have some on actual housing estates.
Yeah, that's in my ward desk.
And those are the sort of things that will be in the strategy, so that everyone can have an EP.
I think it's also important to just be mindful where it comes to private developments, us not subsidising private development that generating profit in installing these? Because I know that there's an issue that's emerging in the East Village where EV charge points stopped. Have been, the infrastructure's there, but stopped. And I don't understand why I was there, but yeah, okay, Blossom.
Yeah, this is really welcomed. I note working in partnership with other boroughs and the proportion of charging points which will be in Newham being much higher than other boroughs involved. But understand, is it Waltham Forest that will be leading the procurement process? So just what mechanisms are in place to ensure that of charges that will be in Newham, what steps are we taking to ensure that our needs are put foremost in that partnership?
Okay, yeah, regarding the higher proportion of charges in Newham, basically we've been ambitious in terms of proposals for this project. And we are also, in addition to the procurement exercise, we're going to enter into a partnership agreement with the other local authorities with that to make sure that the investment targeted for Newham is going to come to Newham, and also Newham is going to benefit from this partnership arrangement as well.
Okay. No.
What are the mechanisms we're going to use to do that is my question.
Sorry, mechanism to get the right numbers.
No, how do we ensure that Waltham Forest don't just run off? Sorry, I shouldn't say it in that way. How do we ensure that our partners who are leading the procurement are going to make sure that Newham's interest is at heart? So what do we do to be assured with our partners?
There will be a head of terms as part of procurement, the procurement agreement.
Yeah.
That they sign up to. So that would give us total assurance that the Newham's interest and the amount of charging points we want will be delivered.
Okay.
They've signed that memo of understanding.
Other touch points, monitoring.
We will be with, this is just going to procurement, and when we get the provider, there will be touch points then to ensure we're to deliver those. And we have a very, very good relationship with Waltham Forest on this.
I'll just add that there is a plan that we have contract management meeting during the term of the concession.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor.
Thank you, and these are clearly much needed, and well done, Charles and team, for negotiating a better share in terms of partnership role. In the financial implication, you say that the CPOs are required to fund at least 78% of the resulting cost. Once we go through the procurement exercise, I just like to know what's our thinking around how we going to be funding that.
Sorry, if I go.
Financial implication 8.1.2.
Okay. If I got your question correctly, you're asking how we're going to ensure.
Because we expected to fund 78% of 19.3 million. The question really is what's our plans around that? How are we going to meet those costs?
Yeah, what we did a market engagement exercise for this procurement, and at the moment there is an appetite in the industry to fund, if possible, to fund everything. So we are confident that there will be players that will be interested in bidding for this work when we go to tender.
Yeah, okay, fine. I'm going to suggest that we move on. So going to the recommendations, you note the recommendations on the big page number 673, went to 674, section 2.5. So the reasons set out in the report and its appendices recommended through 2.1.1 all the way through to 2.1.5. Is that agreed?
Agreed, yeah.
And now we're moving to agenda item 14. Regulating micro mobility services in Newham. So this is Councillor Sarah Ruiz.
Sorry for that. Most of us here will have been recognised that the borough is currently impacted by I just call them scooters or electric bikes. And this report is actually to help us deal with those issues. we want Newham to be a place where everyone is empowered by the bicycle. But by addressing barriers such as the cost of purchasing, a lack of secure storage, we will ensure that every resident can enjoy the many benefits of cycling. We know that more cycling will not only improve our residents' health, but also reduce our environmental impact and provide a cost-effective transport option, particularly important in today's cost of living crisis. To unlock these benefits, we need to invest in better regulation of dockless cycle hire services, for example, Lime bikes. At the same time, we are dedicated to ensuring that Newham remains a place where footways are clear, safe and accessible. While dockless cycling offers increased mobility, it can also lead to cluttered footways resulting in road danger, if not properly managed. This is why we are proposing dedicated parking spaces for dockless bikes, ensuring that they are left in designated areas. By taking these actions, we aim to maximise the advantages of dockless cycling, making it a sustainable, convenient transport option. This balanced approach will help us create a borough where cycling is both safe and accessible, while keeping our streets clear and welcoming for all, ultimately building a more inclusive, efficient and sustainable future for our residents. Yeah, basically it means that hopefully it will lead to not having these bikes littering our pavements right across the borough. And in fact, Charles, well, Charles is this year as well.
That's me.
No, it's Martin. Okay.
I have nothing to add. That was a great introduction. Okay. I've got Councillor John Whitworth, Councillor Neil Wilson, Councillor Johnny McLean, and Councillor Madeline Simon-Ponton. Questions, please.
Yeah, questions.
Well, Councillor Lewis has underlined the importance of encouraging people to cycle. We're undertaking a number of efforts to do this, so it's be a great pity really if people are put off bikes by seeing them all over the pavements and against their homes and this kind of thing. I just wondered, in establishing the formalised parking space, if we've noted the experience of other authorities and how they have dealt with this and what the results have been.
Thanks for a good question. Thank you. I think we have consulted with Walton Forest, which has introduced the space like 10 years ago. So we are building on the experience, which has been several years. But the important part of this is to avoid the obstruction of footway. So surely that would be an improvement.
You've seen success in other boroughs in Fenwell.
You know, several years experience on that. We're a little bit late, but okay, right. So then I've got Neil.
Yeah, welcome this, particularly in regards to 814, rightly under equalities, regards to footway obstruction in terms of disabled people with vision and or other mobility impairments and people, children, people with buggies, etc. Noting that it doesn't include e-scooters at the moment, which is obviously quite a lot of controversial legislation making or non-making at the moment. The recommendation that's put to us as cabinet members is a pending operation of the Pan-London contract. 2026, are we represented in those discussions, and what progress could we sort of put on public record towards making this a Pan-London, which would make sense because people don't recognise boundaries with these bikes that may be coloured green and etc.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, we have regular, thank you. We have regular meeting with London councils and TfL about the progress. We expect to open in 2026. However, things can go, you know, much further. So we making sure at the moment to regulate the
sorry, the operators that which are operating at the moment already in our borough. So, but yeah, also to note, there is the English devolution bill, which is not noted on the report because it's been recently introduced, and we are very welcome that white paper, because that is another. It's going to further support the enforcement, especially the enforcement of the operators, local authorities. And again, also we are consulting with them. Recently received a EFT questionnaire where we had the opportunity to share our view, which are aligned with this.
Okay, right, thank you very much. Now moving on to Councillor Charlene McLean, and then I'll come to Councillor Madeline Solly-Ponting as the last question.
Brilliant, thank you, Chair. I sound like everyone else, and I don't usually do, but I really welcome this, and I really do on behalf of the residents of West Ham, because these particular bites that I mentioned in the report, they blight the streets, and it's like they multiply overnight. So I just had a couple of questions, because we have to ask questions rather than statements. So in 410, it mentions that people who don't park in the right places will have different warnings and financial sanctions, etc. How are we going to enforce that, or not enforce it, but how are we going to ensure that happens so that people park in the right places? And also, in 411, it mentions that residents will be able to report incorrectly parked bikes either directly with the operator or via Love Clean Streets. I was just wondering if a particular category was going to be added onto that, or if it would be classed as fly tipping or something. I wasn't sure. And my last question is, how are you going to decide where they're going to go? Because in our ward in West Ham, I can think of some great places where they could be put, but it's brilliant. Well done. Thank you.
Okay, very much. Do you want to answer the question that was there?
Sure. There was 3.
With regards to the first one, which is around enforcement, we want to work with the operators via a memoranda of understanding. So we make sure that we're going to have some disincentive or incentives parking the bikes in the dedicated base. So at the moment, there is already some incentives that the current operator, the line one, is doing, which is giving some free rides if you were back where they're supposed to be. So we can definitely work with them on how we can make sure that. But yeah, we do have some legal power under the Highways Act, as noted in the 3.9 in the report, where we can use our enforcement to enforce bays if they are obstructing the footway. With regard, second question was about not clean. Yeah, we are communicating with the team, so we would like to ask them if it was possible to add a tool where you can report the issue, and straight away that will be linked to the operator to capture. And the third question was around
where the base
go. So the pilot area is going to be where the bikes are already, so where the operator is operating, which is the western side of Newham. And we will look at expanding that after probably a minimum of 6 months of experimental order. But we welcome, any suggestions in the future of how and where we can introduce these.
Thank you.
Okay, fine. So, Madeline.
As a disabled person who doesn't drive, I'm very grateful that there's going to be obstacles removed from the pavement. The question is, we have a lot of electric bikes, electric scooters and adult bikes using pavements in general, not just for parking, but actually for riding on. Is it possible as part of that work to encourage the riders of the hire vehicles to remind users to follow the highway code and not ride on pavements?
So
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, super. So I can't see any more questions. I'm going to suggest that we move straight to the recommendations, which are set out in the big page number 686. Set out in the report and its appendices. Cabinet is recommended to agree. 2.1, delegate to the corporate director of environment. Environment and sustainable transport 2, and then you can see the rest A to D and then 2. Is that agreed, cabinet members?
Agreed, yeah.
Now, so agenda item 15, procurement of corpus contract. Is this Alan?
Thank you, Chair. In the interest of time, I'll try to be brief. And thanks to corporate leadership team and the service directors, setting process and the budget challenge. We have been continually looking at all possible ways to save money, increase efficiencies, reduce costs. And this report here is part of that consistent approach that we've adopted across the board in order to maximize efficiencies, economies of scale, and money. Security provision is essential to protect and safeguard our assets and enable delivery of some of our vital services. Proposal is to procure all types of security services through an open tender lot approach. And this is designed to achieve the objective that I just stated earlier. Currently, back in 23-24, we were engaged with around 18 suppliers who would deliver this across the council price of £4.7 million. And individual services are responsible for commissioning and paying for those services. Clearly, they have to do that in compliance with council financial regulations and standing orders. We are proud of our London living wage policy, and if agreed, that policy will be part of the procurement process to make sure that we continue with that. The proposal here is that we tender for 3 years plus 2 years with development extension subject to satisfactory performance. I have been assured that as part of the reviewing process, we will look at every possibility to reduce the needs and requirements by assessing whether we can do it in-house or central ways, or possibly introducing technology to save money. And that process will be taken as part of the process. And the need for the security will vary on a year-by-year basis, because clearly depending upon the use of the assets. And one of the things that we will do is to make sure that we use our assets for alternative purposes wherever possible. So there are things that assure us that are being provided, and it's clearly this is something that we have to be delivered, and we need to reduce the cost. And the proposal is that we authorize officers to go out to procure this service based on what's in the report. Thank you, Chair.
All right, fine, thank you very much. I've got one question from Councillor Neil Wilson.
Yeah, I hesitate to ask this really, but on page 700, under financial implications, the penultimate paragraph of 8.1 refers to services are responsible for commissioning and paying for their own security services and must do so complying with financial regulations. Now, I think I'm reassured with your statement in the report that the requirement would change year on year as use and ownership of buildings changes and might dispose of some buildings. But this does imply that there's only an annual review and it's still at the service level. Do we mean service directorates or the council? Or because I would have thought that it might be an opportune moment to us not having this sort of cross accounting procedure, and that if it's corporately driven, then it's corporately driven.
Paragraph of the report is simply setting out what the current arrangements are.
Right.
Proposal here is to move to a corporate contract for all of the security arrangements. So it should just be relative explaining the current arrangement in the context of moving to new arrangement, which I hope will be more appealing.
That is the precise point, Chair, that we want to centralize it, bring it together, achieve economy of scale and value for money, and have better control and good management in that sense. Because certainly it's trust the departments with 8 different providers, possibly delivering different level of service with different performances. So this is all intended for improvements and moving in the right direction to save money and rationalize and centralize.
So that paragraph is not correct.
That's correct. As to explain
current situation.
Just so you can insert something in there, because I think it just is confusing if this is a public document.
Okay, so what would be a proposed form of words to?
Currently.
Sentencing question, we could add proposals in the report, will seek to, move to a corporate arrangement as set out in the report.
I'm satisfied with that. Yeah, okay, fine, so. We'll add that with, sorry, which section do we add that to?
8.1 penultimate. Third paragraph.
Okay.
That's the existing situation, but not under the new proposal.
Sorry, it's section 8.
8.1.
Plan will change.
8, right, okay, financial implications, okay, fine. So we can capture that, mostly to check with them. Fine, it's going straight to the recommendations for the reasons in the report. And in the report, Cabinet's recommended to agree 2.1 to 2.2, is that agreed?
Yeah, agreed.
All right. Finally, we have got the responsibility LBN Health and Adult Social Care Scrutiny Commission meeting. No, we've done that.
Remember that?
That was at the start, about 5 hours.
So we just have to notice that agenda item 17 is exclusion of the present conflict, and we will vote that once today. And then just wanted to formally note, and I'm going to need to get agreements, and we formally note the exempt appendices, agenda item 7, restoration and regeneration of the Carpenters Estate Programme update, pages 719 to 928. Is that agreed? Then finally, before colleague Dash.
Oh, yes,
As you all know, it is the LGBT Heritage Month, and the Positive East are undertaking a really amazing cultural artistic initiative, and it's in relation to their advocacy around HIV and care for those with HIV, which they've been doing over the past several years. And they, as part of their campaign, part of Positive East U equals U, quit. They're encouraging everyone to take a selfie on their phones and then upload it as you scan the booklet, and it will be part of a art installation that will be touring across the country, and the way in which the famous artists will arrange the faces so that you can see the presentation of the U equal U. So later this week, for those members of Cabinet and the Executive that will be at the Cabinet Accountability meeting on Thursday, I'm going to see if we can do a group one, and if that works, and then do individual ones. Okay, sure. Anyhow, so for all those marking heritage of our LGBT community, just know that you've got an ally in your council.
Yeah.